So hey, what's up guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel, and today we are gonna see what if Harry Potter died and woke up at age 1 with all his future memories and he will defeat Voldemort by himself. So if you're new to this channel, please make sure to subscribe and like this video. And to meet some YouTube commenting guidelines, I have to make intro. So if you want, you can directly skip to the video. So now without wasting any more time, let's get straight to the video.
What if Harry woke up at age 1 with all his future memories and stopped Voldemort himself? The green light hit him, and Harry Potter woke up screaming. Not the scream of a baby, though that's what came out of his tiny throat, but the scream of a 17-year-old who just watched Voldemort's killing curse slam into his chest in the Forbidden Forest. He'd accepted death. He'd walked into it willingly, felt his soul detach, spoken to Dumbledore in that white-washed King's Cross of the afterlife. And then he was here. Crib bars. Wooden crib bars pressed against his face as he thrashed, his body responding to panic his infant muscles couldn't process. His hands so small, so impossibly small, grabbed at the rails while his mind reeled through 17 years of memory that shouldn't exist yet. Voldemort was dead. No, Voldemort was dying. Right now, tonight, in this very house. Harry could hear the screaming downstairs suddenly stop. Could hear the thud of a body hitting the floor. Mom. The word crashed through him with enough force to make him choke on his own sob. Lily Potter was dead. Had been dead for his entire life, except she'd been alive 3 minutes ago. Except he'd heard her voice through the ceiling. Heard her begging, heard her offering her own life for his. He remembered this. He'd seen it in the Dementor's presence, heard her screams echo through 100 nightmares. But remembering and experiencing were two different kinds of torture. The door to the nursery exploded inward. Harry's tiny body flinched so hard he nearly tipped the crib. And there he was, Lord Voldemort, the man who would spend the next 16 years making Harry's life a living hell, who would kill and torture and destroy everything Harry loved. He stood in the doorway with his wand raised and his red eyes gleaming, and Harry wanted to kill him. Wanted to wrap his hands around that pale throat and squeeze until the light went out of those terrible eyes. Wanted to scream every curse he knew, every spell Hermione had ever taught him, every dirty trick he'd learned in the DA. But his hands were the size of golf balls. His magic was wild and unfocused. And Tom Marvolo Riddle was pointing a wand at his face with the casual confidence of a man swatting a fly. Such a waste, Voldemort said, and his voice was exactly as Harry remembered, high and cold and utterly devoid of humanity. You could have been useful, Harry Potter. Your mother's sacrifice, your father's blood. But prophecies are inconvenient things, and I prefer to be thorough. Harry stared at him, really looked at him, with 17 years of context that the original Harry Potter hadn't possessed. Voldemort was thin. Not powerful, thin, not deliberately gaunt, malnourished. His robes hung wrong on his shoulders. His wand hand trembled slightly, the way a person's hand trembled when they'd been casting too long without rest. He's falling apart, Harry realized. The Horcruxes are ripping him to pieces, and he doesn't even know it. Avada Kedavra. The green light filled Harry's vision for the second time in as many minutes. He felt the curse hit his forehead, felt it burn and tear and try to rip his soul from his body. But there was something in the way. Something anchored him to his flesh, wrapped around his core like armor made of love and sacrifice and a mother's dying wish. The curse rebounded. Voldemort didn't even have time to scream. One moment he was standing there, victorious, certain, and the next his body was crumbling to ash, while something dark and shrieking tore itself free and vanished through the ruined ceiling. Harry sat in his crib, forehead splitting with pain, and watched the most dangerous Dark Lord in a century reduce himself to nothing but a wandering spirit. 4 Horcruxes. Harry thought through the agony. He's got 4 Horcruxes left, plus the piece that just ran away, plus the piece that's now stuck in my head. 7 total. 6 to destroy. The pain in his forehead spiked and Harry blacked out. He woke to unfamiliar arms and familiar voices.
Can't just leave him here, Albus!
James and Lily are dead. The whole bloody house is destroyed, and you want to leave a baby in the rubble. Hagrid. That was Hagrid's voice. Rough and emotional, and exactly as Harry remembered. The giant's hands were surprisingly gentle as he cradled Harry against his massive chest. I understand your concern, Hagrid, and that voice, that calm, measured grandfatherly voice, made Harry's tiny hands clench into fists. But there are protections we must consider. Lily's sacrifice created wards that can only be anchored through blood. Her sister, Petunia. Hagrid's voice pitched up with disbelief. You're not serious. That woman hates magic, Dumbledore. Hates it with everything she's got. You'd put Harry with her. The blood wards will keep him safe from Voldemort's followers. It is the only way. No, Harry thought with sudden vicious clarity. No, it's not. But he couldn't speak. Could barely move. His body was a prison of soft bones and undeveloped muscles, and all he could do was lie there and listen while Albus Dumbledore sentenced him to 10 years of hell. Take him to Privet Drive. Hagrid, I will meet you there. The motorcycle ride was cold. Harry tucked his face against Hagrid's coat and tried to plan through the exhaustion and the throbbing pain in his scar. He knew what waited for him at Privet Drive. The cupboard, the missed meals, Vernon's fists and Petunia's sharp tongue and Dudley's casual cruelty. He'd survived it once. Had come out the other side damaged but functional. He wasn't going to survive it again. The blood wards were real. Harry knew that much. Dumbledore wasn't lying about the protection they offered. But Dumbledore was also wrong about them being the only option. The wards required Harry to call Privet Drive home, to accept it as his place of residence. And Harry Potter, age 15 months, had no intention of ever accepting the Dursleys as family. The motorcycle touched down on Privet Drive just as dawn began to break. Harry watched through slitted eyes as Dumbledore appeared from the shadows, McGonagall at his side. He listened to them argue about the Dursleys. McGonagall's objections were everything Harry wished someone had fought harder for, and felt a complicated mix of gratitude and resentment. She'd tried, and Dumbledore had overruled her, and no one had checked. No one had visited. No one had made sure the boy, who lived, was actually living. Dumbledore placed him on the doorstep like a bottle of milk, tucked a letter into his blankets, cast warming charms that would fade within the hour, and then they left. Harry lay on the cold concrete and stared up at the pre-dawn sky and made himself a promise. I'm getting out of here. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, I'm getting out. And then I'm going to destroy every piece of Tom Riddle's soul before he even knows I'm coming. The door opened. Petunia Dursley's face appeared, pale and pinched and already twisting with disgust. Vernon, she shrieked. Viarnon. Harry let himself cry. It wasn't hard. His body wanted to cry, was designed to cry, and the sound brought both Dursleys to the doorstep with expressions of mounting horror. What is it? Vernon demanded, his mustache bristling. Is that a baby? It's her, Petunia whispered, and her voice was poison. It's Lily's. I'd recognize that face anywhere. He looks just like that awful Potter man. Vernon's face went purple. Actually purple. Like a bruise spreading from his collar to his hairline. We're not keeping it. I won't have it in my house, Petunia. I won't have. The letter. Petunia said, and snatched the envelope from Harry's blankets. Her eyes scanned Dumbledore's neat handwriting, and her lips pressed together so hard they went white. He says there are protections. That we have to keep him, or they won't work. That you know. Whose followers will come for us if we don't? Protections. Vernon sputtered. Followers? What kind of nonsense? Hayes threatening us. Petunia's voice had gone flat. Dangerous. That old man is threatening us with those freaks if we don't take the boy in. Harry watched the calculation happen behind his aunt's eyes. Watched her weigh her hatred of magic against her fear of it. Watched her reach the conclusion he'd known she would reach. Fine, she said, but he's not getting anything special. He'll earn his keep, or he'll learn why. She picked Harry up like he was something diseased. Carried him into the house without a backward glance. And Harry let it happen because he was 15 months old and couldn't walk yet, and had approximately 0 options for immediate escape. But he was already planning. The first year was the hardest, not because of the Dursleys. Harry had survived them before and could survive them again, especially now that he knew what to expect. No, the hardest part was being trapped in a body that couldn't do anything. He couldn't walk reliably until he was nearly 2. Couldn't speak clearly until closer to 3. His magic was a churning storm inside him, responding to his emotions with devastating unpredictability, but he couldn't direct it, couldn't shape it. Every accidental burst of power, making a toy float, turning Dudley's hair blue. Shattering a window when Vernon raised his hand. Brought punishment and restriction and tighter locks on the cupboard door. Harry learned to control his reactions. Learned to keep his face blank when Vernon screamed at him. To stay silent when Petunia slapped his hands away from food. To curl into a ball in his cupboard and let the rage and grief wash over him without acting on it. He'd done this before. He could do it again. But this time he was watching. The Dursleys operated on predictable patterns. Vernon left for work at 7:30 every morning and returned at 6:00 every evening. Petunia had her shows, her soaps at 200, her evening programs at 800. That occupied her attention completely. Dudley was a non-factor. Too young and too stupid to notice anything Harry did as long as it didn't interrupt his toys. And the neighborhood had gaps. Hours when no one was watching Privet Drive. Windows of opportunity that a very small, very quiet child could exploit. Harry started testing his limits when he was 2.5. The first time he made it out of the cupboard on his own, he nearly cried with relief. The lock was a simple latch, and while his fingers were clumsy, his magic was cooperative. A tiny pulse of intent, a gentle push, and the mechanism clicked open. He didn't leave the cupboard that night. Just opened the door, looked out at the dark hallway, and closed it again. Testing. Confirming. The second time, a week later, he walked to the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, ate 3 slices of cheese and an apple, and drank directly from the milk carton. Then he cleaned up every trace of his presence and went back to bed. The Dursleys never noticed. Harry repeated this pattern for months. Small trips, careful thefts. Nothing that would draw attention. Nothing that would trigger Vernon's paranoid inspections. He built up a reserve of stolen food. Hidden in a loose floorboard in his cupboard, crackers, dried fruit. Anything that wouldn't spoil. But food was just survival. What Harry really needed was information. At age 3, he made his first real move. The library was 6 blocks from Privet Drive. Harry had seen it on one of his excursions. A squat brick building with big windows and a children's section visible from the street. Libraries meant books. Books meant knowledge. And Harry had 17 years of magical education to reconstruct from memory alone. Getting there was the challenge. 3-year-old legs weren't built for 6-block walks, and Harry's body was undersized even for his age. Malnutrition did that to a kid, but Harry had advantages no 3-year-old should have. He understood traffic patterns. He knew which neighbors were nosy and which minded their own business. He'd been surviving on his own since he was 11. Technically, because the Dursleys had never provided more than the bare minimum of supervision. He picked a Thursday afternoon in late July. Petunia was deep in her soaps. Dudley was napping. Vernon was at work. Harry slipped out the back door, crossed through Mrs. Figg's overgrown garden, and made his way toward the library one careful block at a time. He got some looks. A 3-year-old walking alone drew attention, even in a neighborhood as self-absorbed as this one. But Harry kept his head down and walked with purpose, and nobody stopped him. Nobody asked if he was lost or where his parents were. The library was blessedly cool inside. Air conditioning. Harry had forgotten how good air conditioning felt after spending his childhood in a sweltering cupboard.
Well, hello there.
Harry looked up to find a librarian smiling down at him. She was middle-aged, gray-haired, with the kind of soft face that suggested she actually liked children. "Are you here with someone?" "Sweetheart." Harry had prepared for this question. "Mum's outside," he said, pitching his voice high and childish. "She said I could look at the books." The librarian's smile flickered with uncertainty, but Harry was already moving toward the children's section with the confidence of someone who belonged there. After a moment, she let him go. The children's books were useless. Picture books and early readers, nothing that would help him. But the adult section was only a few shelves over, and Harry had learned a long time ago that looking like he belonged was half the battle. He found what he was looking for in the reference section, a phone book. Harry flipped to the T's and ran his finger down the columns until he found it. Tunks E. 14 Rosewood Lane, Kensington. Andromeda Tunks. Knee black. To sound pure blood who'd married a muggle, born wizard and been blasted off the family tapestry for it. Mother of Nymphadora, the metamorphmagus who would one day become an Auror, who would one day die in the Battle of Hogwarts alongside her husband, who was currently, in 1984, raising a 10-year-old daughter and had absolutely no idea that Harry Potter even existed as more than a newspaper headline. Harry memorized the address. Then he moved to another section, local maps, and figured out how to get from Little Winging to Kensington by public transit. It would take years. He was 3, and he couldn't exactly hop on a bus by himself. But he had time, he had a goal, and he had something he'd never had in his original childhood, a plan. He made it back to Privet Drive before Petunia's shows ended, slipped in through the back door, curled up in his cupboard and pretended to sleep. That night, as Vernon locked the cupboard door and the house settled into silence, Harry allowed himself a small smile. One step at a time, one day at a time. He'd waited 16 years to defeat Voldemort in his last life. He could wait a few more in this one. Age 4 changed everything. Harry had been careful, so careful. 2 years of perfect compliance, of yes Aunt Petunia and no Uncle Vernon, and invisible silence whenever Dudley was throwing tantrums. He'd built a routine, found his windows, established his library visits as a secret ritual that no one in the house suspected. And then Vernon came home drunk. It happened on a Tuesday in September. Vernon had been passed over for a promotion. Harry knew because Petunia had been on the phone complaining about it all afternoon. And apparently his solution was to stop at the pub after work and drink until his face matched his mood. Harry heard the car pull up, heard the engine cut off and the door slam, heard the heavy, Uneven footsteps on the front walk. He was in the living room, cleaning. Petunia had him scrubbing the baseboards while Dudley watched cartoons, and Harry had learned that visible productivity kept Vernon's attention away from him. The front door banged open. "Peony!" Harry's hands froze on his rag. That voice, that was the bad voice. The dangerous voice. The voice Vernon used right before someone got hurt. Petunia came hurrying from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Vern." "Darling what?" "Don't darling me." Vernon swayed in the doorway, his face purple and sweating. "Don't you dare. Do you know what they did? Do you know what that jumped-up little secretary told me?" "Vernon, please." "The neighbors." "DMMTUHBORS." Harry stayed very still. He'd learned that stillness was survival in moments like these. Become furniture. Become invisible. Let the storm pass over you. But Vernon's eyes were scanning the room now, looking for something to break, something to hurt. And they landed on Harry with the precision of a predator spotting wounded prey. "You," Vernon breathed. "This is your fault. Everything was fine before you showed up, boy. Everything was no harm, AL? Vernon, he's just a child." Petunia started, but Vernon was already moving. Harry tried to run. His body was faster now, stronger. 4 years of growth and survival, giving him more capability than he'd had as an infant. But Vernon was bigger and angrier, and his hand closed around Harry's arm with enough force to leave bruises. "I'll teach you," Vernon snarled, breath hot and sour with alcohol. "I'll beat the freakishness out of you if it's the last thing I—" Harry's magic exploded. He didn't mean to do it. Didn't consciously choose anything. But 17 years of combat instincts were buried in his brain, and his body was in danger, and his magic responded the way it always responded to threats. Vernon flew backward, not gently, violently, like he'd been hit by a car. He crashed through the glass coffee table and slammed into the wall hard enough to crack the plaster. Blood bloomed from cuts on his face and arms. His eyes rolled back in his head and he went limp. Silence. Dudley had stopped watching his cartoons. Petunia stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, her face white as chalk. And Harry looked down at his hands, at the power still crackling under his skin, visible as faint sparks around his fingertips. "Freak," Petunia whispered. "Freak!" "What did you do? What did you do to him?" She lunged for Harry, hands outstretched like claws, and Harry's magic responded again. Gentler this time. Just a push, just enough to make her stumble back. "Don't touch me," Harry said, and his voice came out wrong. Too flat. Too cold. Too old for a 4-year-old's mouth. Petunia's face twisted with terror. Real terror. The kind Harry had only ever seen on the faces of Death Eaters when they realized they were about to die. "Get out," she hissed. "Get out of my house." "Jetter." Harry looked at Vernon's unconscious body, at Dudley's tear-streaked face, at his aunt, who had spent 4 years making his life miserable and was now pointing at the door like he was a demon she could banish. He should stay, should play the victim, should cry and apologize and wait for Dumbledore's people to show up and smooth things over. But Harry was so tired, so sick of pretending, so done with being small and weak and helpless in a house full of people who hated him. "Fine," he said. And he walked out the front door. The sun was setting over Little Winging, and Harry Potter was homeless. He'd taken nothing from the Dursleys, hadn't even grabbed his hidden food stash from the cupboard. Just walked out into the September evening with nothing but the oversized clothes on his back and the wand knowledge in his head. Stupid. Really incredibly stupid. He should have planned this better. Should have waited until he was older, until he had resources, until he could actually survive on his own. but his hands were still shaking with the memory of Vernon's grip on his arm. His magic was still churning, restless and angry and ready to hurt anyone who tried to hurt him first. He couldn't go back there. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. Harry started walking. Little Winging was a suburb of London, technically. Close enough that the bus routes connected them. Far enough that the prices were lower. Harry had memorized the transit maps in his library visits, had traced the routes from here to Kensington 100 times, dreaming about the day he'd be old enough to make the journey. He wasn't old enough. But he also wasn't willing to spend another night on the streets when he had an actual destination. The bus stop was 3 blocks away. Harry dug through his pockets and found nothing. No money, no ticket, no way to pay. But the bus was coming. He could see it turning the corner, and Harry made a decision. He waited until an older woman approached the stop, positioned himself slightly behind her, like a grandson tagging along with his grandmother. When the bus arrived and she climbed on, Harry slipped in behind her and ducked into a seat before the driver could get a good look at him. His heart was pounding. His palms were sweating. But no one said anything, and the bus pulled away from the curb, and Harry watched Little Winging disappear through the window with something like relief blooming in his chest. 1 hour. 1 hour on this bus, then a transfer to the tube, then a short walk to Rosewood Lane. He could do this. He could make it. The bus route took him through neighborhoods that grew steadily nicer as they approached London proper. Harry watched the houses get bigger, the cars get newer, the people on the streets get better dressed. It was a world away from Privet Drive's aggressive normalcy. The transfer point was a large station with multiple bus lines converging. Harry slipped off his bus and immediately spotted a problem. The tube entrance required a ticket. And unlike the bus, there was no way to sneak through the turnstiles. Harry found a bench and sat down to think. He could try to jump the turnstile. He'd done it before, in his other life, though never at age 4. The risk was getting caught, and a 4-year-old alone in a tube station would definitely attract attention. He could wait here overnight and try again in the morning. But that meant sleeping rough in a public place, which was dangerous for entirely different reasons. He could try to use his magic. It had responded to his fear earlier. Maybe it would respond to his need now. Harry closed his eyes and reached for the power inside him. It was there. Always there, churning like a storm, barely contained by his child's body. He could feel it pressing against his skin, wanting to be used. The question was whether he could direct it. In his other life, Harry hadn't done serious wandless magic until he was much older. The ministry tracked underedge casting, but only wand-based spells. Wandless magic was harder to detect, harder to trace, but also harder to control. Harry focused on the turnstile, imagined it clicking open, imagined himself walking through like he had every right to be there. Nothing happened. He tried again, harder this time, really pushing his magic toward the mechanism, demanding that it obey. The turnstile's light flickered from red to green, stayed green. Harry was moving before he could second-guess himself. Through the turnstile, down the escalator, onto the platform. The green light switched back to red behind him, and no alarms sounded, and nobody chased him. He was in. The next train arrived in 4 minutes. Harry found a seat in the corner of the car and made himself as small as possible. Not hard, given his size, and watched the darkness of the tunnel rush past the windows. 3 stops to Kensington, then the walk to Rosewood Lane, then the hardest part, convincing Andromeda Tunks to help a random 4-year-old who showed up on her doorstep. Harry had a plan for that too. It wasn't a good plan, but it was better than nothing. Rosewood Lane was beautiful. Harry stood at the end of the street and stared at the row of townhouses stretching away into the evening gloom. Gas lamps flickered on as he watched, casting warm pools of light on the brick facades and iron railings. Number 14 was near the middle, distinguished from its neighbors by a slightly overgrown garden and a purple door. Purple. Of course, Tonk's house had a purple door. Harry's legs were shaking. The walk from the tube station had taken almost an hour. His body couldn't move as fast as his mind wanted it to. And he was running on nothing but adrenaline and desperation. But he was here. He'd made it. He walked up to number 14 and knocked on the purple door. Silence. Then footsteps, getting closer. Then the door swung open, and Harry found himself looking up at a woman with brown hair and warm brown eyes, and a face that combined black family aristocracy with something softer around the edges. Andromeda Tunks looked down at him with the polite confusion of someone who'd been expecting literally anyone else. "Hello there. Are you lost, sweetie?" Harry had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. Had planned his opening line, his explanation, his pitch for why she should help him. But standing here, looking up at the first adult, who'd shown him genuine kindness in months, his throat closed up and his eyes burned, and all his careful plans dissolved into nothing. "I need help," he said, and his voice cracked. "Please. I need help and I don't have anywhere else to go." Andromeda's expression shifted. The polite confusion melted into something sharper, more assessing. She glanced up and down the street, checking for observers, Harry realized, then looked back at him with new intensity. "What's your name?" "Harry. Harry Potter." The words dropped like stones into still water. Andromeda went rigid. Her hand tightened on the doorframe. Her eyes, those warm brown eyes, suddenly had steel in them. "That's not possible," she said very quietly. "Harry Potter is in the custody of his Muggle relatives, under the protection of Albus Dumbledore himself." "I know." Harry swallowed hard. I'm not anymore. I did accidental magic." "My uncle?" He couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't make his mouth form the words. He didn't have to. Andromeda's eyes dropped to his arm, where his sleeve had ridden up to reveal the purple. Black fingerprints Vernon had left behind. "Inside," she said, and her voice had gone cold in a way that had nothing to do with Harry. "Now." She ushered him through the purple door into a warmly lit hallway, closed and locked the door behind him, cast 3 different locking charms that Harry recognized, and 2 that he didn't. "Ted," she called up the stairs. "I need you down here." Now, footsteps on the upper floor. Then a man appeared at the top of the stairs, stocky, friendly face, with the kind of rumpled look that suggested he'd just been reading in front of a fire. Ted Tunks, Muggle, born wizard, Andromeda's husband. "What's going?" He stopped when he saw Harry. "Andy." "Who is this?" "He says he's Harry Potter." Ted's eyebrows climbed toward his hairline. "The Harry Potter. The boy who?"
Yes.
Andromeda was already steering Harry toward the kitchen, one hand gentle on his back. "And he's got bruises that look like adult fingers on his arms. So we're going to sit him down and feed him, and figure out what in Merlin's name is going on." Harry let himself be guided. Let himself be sat at a kitchen table that smelled like fresh bread and strong tea. Let Andromeda press a sandwich into his hands and Ted pour him a glass of milk. And then, with 2 strangers watching him with a mixture of concern and suspicion, Harry began to talk. Not everything. Not the truth about his memories. That would get him shipped to St. Mungo's faster than anything. But enough. The Dursleys' hatred, the cupboard, the missed meals, Vernon's drinking and Petunia's cruelty, and the years of being told he was worthless, freakish, Unwanted. The accidental magic that had finally broken everything open. Andromeda's face got colder and colder as he spoke. Not at him, at the story. At the people who'd done this to him. 4 years, she said when he finished. Dumbledore left you with them for 4 years. He thought the blood wards would protect me. Harry was too tired to keep the bitterness out of his voice. I guess they did. Just not from the people inside them. Blood wards. Andromeda spat the words like a curse. Blood wards require acceptance. Willing acceptance from both parties. If your relatives treated you like this, she cut herself off, visibly struggling to regain control. Ted leaned forward. Harry, do you have any other family? Anyone magical who could take you in? Sirius Black is my godfather. Harry watched their faces carefully. But he's in Azkaban, for murders he didn't commit. Silence. Andromeda's face had gone completely blank. The Black family mask. Harry recognized. The one they wore when they didn't want anyone to know what they were thinking. That's a very serious accusation, Ted said slowly.
What makes you say that?
Harry took a breath. This was the gamble. The risk. Everything depended on whether he could sell this next part. I remember things, he said. From that night. Not clearly. I was just a baby, but pieces. Images. I remember seeing a rat. A man who turned into a rat. And he was laughing. Andromeda's mask cracked. Just slightly, just around the edges, but Harry saw it. Peter Pettigrew, she breathed. Are you telling me Peter Pettigrew is alive? I don't know. True enough. Harry didn't know where Pettigrew was in 1985. Probably still hiding in the Weasley household, wearing his rat body like a coward's shroud. I just know what I saw. And I know Sirius Black loved my dad. He wouldn't. He couldn't have. His voice cracked for real this time. The exhaustion and the fear and the desperate hope were catching up with him, and Harry felt tears sliding down his face before he could stop them. I don't have anyone, he whispered. Dumbledore put me with people who hurt me. My godfather is in prison. Everyone thinks I'm safe, and I'm not. I'm not safe anywhere. Andromeda made a sound like something was breaking inside her. Then she was around the table and Harry was being pulled into an embrace that smelled like lavender and wool, and something indefinably magical. You're safe here, she said, and her voice had steel in it. Whatever else happens, whatever this means, you're safe here tonight. Ted, call Amelia Bones. Andy, are you sure? If Dumbledore finds out we have him, then Dumbledore can come here and explain to me why he left a toddler with people who locked him in a cupboard. Andromeda's arms tightened around Harry. Call Amelia, and then call Nymphadora's school. Tell them she's coming home for a few days. If we're going to war with the Chief Warlock, we do it as a family. Harry closed his eyes and let himself be held. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Dumbledore would come looking for him. The Ministry would have questions. The Daily Prophet would have a field day when they found out the boy who lived had run away from his guardians. But for the first time in 4 years, for the first time since he'd woken up screaming in a baby's body, Harry felt something that might have been hope. Amelia Bones arrived at midnight. Harry was still awake, running on fumes and nervous energy. When the flue flared green and a woman stepped through with the authority of someone who expected to be obeyed. She was tall, square-jawed, with iron gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. Her monocle caught the firelight as she surveyed the room. Andromeda. Ted. Her eyes landed on Harry. And you must be Mr. Potter. Harry nodded. He was too tired to speak anymore. Too wrung out from telling his story twice already. Once to the Tonkses. Once to an aura they'd called for a preliminary statement. Amelia settled into a chair across from him. I've read the initial report. Accidental magic triggered by physical threat, resulting in injury to your guardian, followed by deliberate departure from the premises. I didn't mean to hurt him, Harry said. I just wanted him to stop. I believe you. Amelia's voice was surprisingly gentle. What I'm more interested in is how you got from Little Winging to Kensington. That's quite a journey for a 4-year-old. Harry hesitated. The truth, that he'd snuck onto a bus and magicked his way through the tube turnstiles, would raise more questions than he wanted to answer. I knew the address, he said finally. I saw it once, in a phone book, and you just decided to come here, to a family you've never met. I know who they are. Harry met Amelia's eyes. I know Andromeda was disowned for marrying Ted. I know she left the Black family because she didn't believe in their blood purity nonsense. I know she's one of the only people in the magical world who might actually care about a kid in trouble instead of just what he represents. Amelia's monocle glinted. That's remarkable insight for someone your age. I'm a remarkable kid. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Amelia barked out a laugh, short, surprised, genuine. Yes, she said. I imagine you are. She leaned back in her chair. Here's what's going to happen, Mr. Potter. I'm going to open an investigation into your guardianship situation. That means interviewing the Dursleys, inspecting your living conditions, and determining whether criminal charges are warranted against your uncle. They won't talk to you, Harry said. They hate magic. They'll deny everything. Muggles have been known to be uncooperative. Amelia's smile had edges. But we have ways of documenting abuse that don't require their cooperation. Healer examinations. Memory extractions if necessary. Veritaserum in extreme cases. Harry felt a chill run down his spine. Memory extractions. If they pulled his memories, they'd see a 17-year-old mind trapped in a 4-year-old body. They'd see the future. They'd see everything. I don't want that, he said quickly. The memory stuff. I don't. I can't. Andromeda's hand landed on his shoulder. We wouldn't do that to a child without extreme need. Amelia, he's been through enough. Amelia studied Harry for a long moment. Then she nodded. No involuntary memory extraction. I give you my word. She stood. But I will need to inform the headmaster. He has legal standing as the executor of your parents' will. Hay left me there. Harry couldn't keep the anger out of his voice. He left me in a cupboard for 4 years. Whatever standing he has, he lost it when he stopped checking on me. That may be true. But it's a legal matter, not an emotional one. Dumbledore will be notified. What he does with that notification is up to him. Amelia headed for the flu. I'll be in touch. In the meantime, the Tonkses have agreed to serve as emergency foster guardians. Try to get some sleep, Mr. Potter. You look like you need it. The green fire swallowed her. Harry slumped in his chair. The adrenaline that had carried him through the evening was finally fading, leaving nothing but bone, deep exhaustion in its wake. Come on, Andromeda said softly. We've got a guest room made up. You can worry about Dumbledore tomorrow. She led him upstairs to a small bedroom at the end of the hall. The bed was soft. The blankets were warm, and a glass of water sat on the nightstand next to a small plate of biscuits. Harry stopped in the doorway. Why are you doing this? He asked. You don't know me. You have no reason to help. Andromeda's face softened. I have every reason. I was disowned for loving the wrong person. I know what it's like to be abandoned by the people who should protect you. And I know what it means to build a new family from the ashes of the old one. She brushed a strand of hair from his forehead. Careful, gentle, like she was afraid he'd break. You're not alone anymore, Harry. Whatever else happens, remember that. She left. The door clicked shut. And Harry climbed into bed, pulled the covers up to his chin, and let himself cry. Not sad crying. Not scared crying. Just release. Years of tension and fear and loneliness, finally finding an outlet. He'd done it. He'd escaped the Dursleys, found allies, started down a path that diverged completely from his original timeline. The Horcruxes were still out there. Voldemort's wraith was still floating through Albania. Dumbledore was still a well-meaning manipulator who'd made terrible choices in the name of the greater good. But Harry was 4 years old, and he had a place to sleep, and tomorrow was a new day. That was enough. For now, that was enough. The owl arrived at breakfast. Harry had slept for nearly 12 hours, his body finally giving out after the chaos of the previous day. He woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of bacon drifting up from downstairs. The Tonks kitchen was warm and cluttered in a way that Privet Drive had never been. Cookbooks stacked on counters, photographs that actually moved, waving and smiling from their frames. A cat, or something like a cat, Harry wasn't sure, curled up on a chair in the corner. And sitting at the table, staring at him with wide purple eyes, was a girl about 10 years old. "You're Harry Potter," she said. "You're Harry Potter." The boy who lived Harry Potter. Her hair was currently a violent shade of pink. As Harry watched, it flickered through several other colors, blue, green, orange, before settling on a purple that matched her eyes. Andromeda said warningly, "It's Tonks. Just Tonks. Nobody calls me Nymphadora except you and Gran." The girl hopped off her chair and circled Harry, like she was examining a particularly interesting bug. "You're smaller than I thought you'd be. Is it true you killed who when you were a baby?" "I didn't kill him," Harry said. He tried to kill me and it didn't work." "But you beat him, right? You won." "Dora." Ted's voice cut through his daughter's enthusiasm. "Harry's had a rough few days. Maybe ease up on the interrogation." Tonks deflated slightly. "Sorry. It's just you're famous. Like really famous. And now you're in our kitchen eating toast." Harry looked down at the plate that had appeared in front of him. Toast, eggs, bacon. More food than he'd seen in a single meal since ever, actually. The Dursleys had never given him this much. Andromeda said, correctly interpreting his hesitation. "We've got a long day ahead." She wasn't wrong. Harry had barely finished his second slice of toast when a large brown owl swooped through the open window and deposited a thick envelope on the table. The seal was unmistakable. A large letter D, surrounded by flowing script that marked it as official Hogwarts correspondence. Dumbledore had found him. Andromeda opened the letter with careful movements, her face betraying nothing. She read it silently, her lips pressing thinner with every line. "He wants a meeting," she said finally. "Today. At Hogwarts." "No." Harry's voice came out harder than he intended. "I'm not going there." "Harry!" "He left me with them." The words were hot and bitter in Harry's mouth. For 4 years. He knew. He had to know. People like that don't hide what they are. He just didn't care enough to check. Andromeda set the letter down. "You may be right. But refusing to meet him will only make things worse. He's the chief warlock, Harry. He has political power that could make our lives very difficult. Then let him. I don't care." "I know you don't, but I do." Andromeda's voice was gentle but firm. "I have a daughter, a husband, a position in society that I've spent 15 years building after my family cast me out. If Dumbledore decides to use that power against us, won't." Harry met her eyes. "He can't. Because if he does, I'll tell everyone what he did. I'll tell the Prophet, the Wesengamot, anyone who'll listen." and then his precious reputation will be in pieces. Silence. Ted was staring at him with something like awe. Tunks had gone very still, her hair fading to a nervous brown. And Andromeda was smiling. "You've thought about this?" she said. "Really thought about it?" "I've had 4 years in a cupboard. Lots of time to think." "A cupboard?" Tunk's voice was small and horrified. "They kept you in a cupboard." Harry hadn't meant to let that slip. But it was out now, and there was no taking it back. "Under the stairs," he said. "That was my room. Until yesterday. The temperature in the kitchen dropped about 10 degrees. Not literally, but the change in atmosphere was just as dramatic." Ted's friendly face had gone hard as stone. Tunks looked like she wanted to hit something. And Andromeda looked like she was calculating the exact sequence of curses she wanted to use on Vernon and Petunia Dursley. "We're going to that meeting," she said, and her voice was ice. "All of us. And Albus Dumbledore is going to answer for what he's done." Hogwarts was exactly as Harry remembered. The gates, the grounds, the castle rising against the Scottish sky like something out of a dream. He'd spent 7 years within these walls. Learning, fighting, growing. He'd died here technically, had watched friends die here too, and now he was back, 4 years old, about to face down the most powerful wizard in Britain. Andromeda had insisted on bringing Ted and Tunks. A show of force, she'd called it. Dumbledore responds to power. We'll show him we're not intimidated. The walk from the gates to the castle took 15 minutes. Harry's short legs struggled to keep up with the adults. But he refused help when Andromeda offered to carry him. He would face Dumbledore on his own 2 feet. Even if those feet were barely larger than his fists. The headmaster's office was at the top of a spiraling staircase, hidden behind a stone gargoyle. Harry watched Andromeda speak the password, "Peppermint humbugs," and felt a strange mix of nostalgia and anger as the staircase carried them upward. Dumbledore was waiting behind his desk. He looked exactly as Harry remembered. The long white beard, the half-moon spectacles, the twinkling blue eyes that had always seemed so warm and wise and completely trustworthy. Harry didn't trust him anymore. "Ah, Andromeda, Ted, young Nymphadora." Dumbledore's voice was gentle, welcoming. And Harry, "I must say, you've caused quite a stir." "Have I?" Harry didn't bother with pleasantries. "Sorry about that. I was too busy escaping from the family you dumped me with to worry about causing stirs." The twinkle in Dumbledore's eyes dimmed slightly. "Harry, I understand you've been through a difficult experience, but I assure you, your placement with the Dursleys was for your own protection." Protection. Harry laughed, and it wasn't a kind sound. "You call it protection. I call it 4 years of being locked in a cupboard and told I was worthless. I call it being starved while my cousin got everything. I call it watching my uncle raise his fist and knowing no one was coming to save me." "Harry, nope." Harry stepped forward, and something in his voice made Dumbledore stop. "You don't get to harry me. You don't get to explain and justify and pretend you didn't know. You're the most powerful wizard in Britain. You defeated Grindelwald. You have spies and resources and a phoenix that can travel anywhere in the world. Are you really going to stand there and tell me you couldn't check on one child? Once, in 4 years." Silence. Dumbledore's face had gone very still. The grandfather routine had vanished, replaced by something older and colder and much more dangerous. "You are remarkably articulate for someone your age," he said quietly. "I've had to be." Indeed, Dumbledore steepled his fingers. "Tell me, Harry, how did you know to go to Andromeda? How did you know her address? How did you know she would help you?" Harry had prepared for this question. "I saw it in a phone book at the library." The address. I mean, the Tunks name. I didn't know what I'd find when I got there, but I knew it had to be better than where I was. And the rest. The things you told Madame Bones about Sirius Black and Peter Pettigrew. Harry's heart stuttered. How did Dumbledore know about that already? Amelia and I spoke this morning, Dumbledore said, answering the unasked question. She was concerned by some of your claims. As am I. Because they're true. Because they're impossible. Dumbledore leaned forward. You were 15 months old when Sirius Black allegedly betrayed your parents. 15 months old when the confrontation with Peter Pettigrew occurred. No one has memories from that age, Harry. No one can. I do. Then you will submit to a memory examination to verify. No. The word hung in the air between them. No. Dumbledore's voice had gone soft. Dangerous. I was told no involuntary memory extractions. Madame Bones gave her word. This would be voluntary. Then I'm choosing not to volunteer. Harry held Dumbledore's gaze. My memories are my own. You don't get to dig through them just because you don't believe me. Andromeda stepped forward. Headmaster, Harry is 4 years old. Whatever your concerns about his precociousness, subjecting a child to that kind of procedure is out of the question. And yet, I must consider the safety of the wizarding world. Dumbledore's voice was reasonable, calm, the voice of a man who'd already decided what he was going to do. Harry has information about threats that still exist. Then I'll share that information when I'm ready, on my terms. Harry straightened his spine. You don't control me, Headmaster. You don't own me. And you've lost any right to make decisions about my welfare. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Dumbledore smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It wasn't even a kind one. It was the smile of a chess player acknowledging a worthy opponent. Very well, he said. You have made your position clear, Harry. And I suppose I have made mine. He gestured toward the door. Andromeda, I trust you will provide adequate care for Mr. Potter. The ministry will require regular reports. Of course, Andromeda said coolly. And I trust the ministry will investigate Harry's previous guardians with appropriate thoroughness. Naturally. Dumbledore's eyes met Harry's one more time. This isn't over, my boy. We will speak again. I'm counting on it. Harry turned and walked out of the office without looking back. The months that followed were the best of Harry's 2 lives. Living with the Tonkses was everything he'd never had. Regular meals, a room of his own, adults who asked how he was feeling and actually listened to the answers. And Tonks. She was 10 going on 20, loud and clumsy and constantly changing her appearance to make Harry laugh. She'd decided within the first week that he was her honorary little brother, and nothing Harry said could convince her otherwise. You're too serious, she announced one afternoon, catching him reading in the garden. All you do is read and think and look angry. You're 4, Harry. You're supposed to be playing. I like reading. You like brooding. It's different. She flopped down beside him. What are you reading anyway? Harry angled the book so she could see the cover. History of Magic. Tonks' face screwed up, boring. Why would you want to read about dead people? Because I need to know everything I can about the last war. Because I need to understand how Voldemort built his power base so I can dismantle it before he rebuilds. Because somewhere out there is a piece of his soul hidden in a locket. And I need to figure out how to destroy it without anyone asking uncomfortable questions. I like knowing things, Harry said instead. Knowledge is power. You sound like my mum. Tonks poked him in the shoulder. Come on, I'll teach you to fly. Harry's heart clenched. Flying. He'd missed flying more than almost anything. The wind in his face, the freedom of the sky, the sense that nothing could touch him up there. "I'm too young," he said. "I'll fall. Please. I'll catch you." She grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the broom shed. "Stop making excuses and come play." Harry let himself be dragged. An hour later, he was 50 feet in the air on a borrowed training broom, laughing harder than he had in years. Tonks swooped around him, her hair streaming pink in the wind, shouting encouragement every time he wobbled. He was still a child. His body was still small and weak and limited. But for one perfect afternoon, flying through the summer sky with his new family, Harry let himself forget about wars and horcruxes and the darkness waiting in the future. Tomorrow he would go back to planning. Tomorrow he would resume his research, his preparation, his slow and careful destruction of everything Tom Riddle had built. But today he was just a kid on a broom, racing his almost sister through the clouds. And for the first time in either of his lives, Harry Potter felt free. The letter arrived on his 5th birthday. Harry was in the middle of his party, a small affair. Just the Tonkses and Amelia Bones, and a few other members of their growing network, when the Ministry owl swooped through the window. Andromeda intercepted it before Harry could. Her face went pale as she read the contents. "What is it?" Ted asked. "They've made a decision." About Harry's guardianship, Andromeda's voice was hollow. Dumbledore petitioned to have him returned to the Dursleys. Said the blood wards were essential for his safety. Harry's stomach dropped. No, he couldn't go back there. He wouldn't survive it. Not again, not after knowing what real family felt like. "And?" Ted pressed. "What did they decide?" Andromeda looked up, and slowly, impossibly, a smile spread across her face. "They denied him. Unanimously." She started laughing, bright and relieved and slightly hysterical. Amelia presented the evidence of abuse. The Wisengamot ruled that the blood ward protections were insufficient justification for placing a child in a harmful environment. "Harry's guardianship has been permanently transferred to us," Tonks demanded. "He's staying with us?" "He's staying with us." Harry didn't remember moving. One moment he was standing by the cake, and the next he was in Andromeda's arms, holding on like he'd never let go. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're home, Harry." Andromeda's arms tightened around him. "You're home." The party continued. There was cake and presents and Tonks, accidentally setting her own hair on fire with a candle. Harry smiled and laughed and let himself enjoy the moment. But part of his mind was already elsewhere, already planning. He was 5 years old. He had a family. He had resources and allies and time. And somewhere out there, hidden in a cave beneath the sea, Slytherin's locket waited to be destroyed. Harry looked out the window at the darkening sky and made a promise to himself. 6 Horcruxes to go. 6 pieces of Tom Riddle's soul standing between him and a world free of Voldemort's shadow. He'd destroyed none of them yet, but that was about to change. The boy who remembered was done waiting. Chapter 2 high. Pieces on the board Harry's hands wouldn't stop shaking. He was standing in the ruins of the Gaunt Shack, 6 years old, staring at a ring that had killed Albus Dumbledore in another timeline. The gold band sat in a rotted wooden box, the black stone gleaming with a darkness that had nothing to do with the dim light filtering through the collapsed roof. Marvolo Gaunt's ring, Slytherin's heirloom, and wrapped around it like invisible barbed wire, curses so vicious they'd eaten through Dumbledore's hand in minutes. Harry had spent 8 months preparing for this moment. 8 months of research, of careful planning, of convincing Andromeda to teach him defensive magic that no 6-year-old should know. 8 months of lying to the people who'd saved him. He hated the lying, hated watching Andromeda's face when he asked questions that were too advanced, too specific, too focused on dark magic and its countermeasures. She never refused to answer. She trusted him, trusted his judgment, trusted that he had reasons even if he couldn't explain them. That trust was going to get her killed if Harry wasn't careful. "Focus," he muttered to himself. "You've done harder things than this." Had he, though? In his other life, Dumbledore had handled the ring. Harry had never even touched it until the old wizard was already dying, had never faced its defenses directly. He'd inherited the Resurrection Stone. After all, the dangerous work was done. Now he was alone in a crumbling shack in Little Hangleton, age 6, about to attempt something that had nearly killed the greatest wizard of the age. The curses on the ring were layered. Harry could feel them even from 3 feet away, a crawling sensation against his magical senses, like spiders walking across his skin. The first layer was a compulsion. "Put me on," it whispered. "Wear me. Use me." The Resurrection Stone called to everyone who knew what it was, promising reunion with the dead. Harry's parents, Sirius, Remus, Tonks. The older Tonks, the one who'd died in the Battle of Hogwarts alongside her husband. Fred, Colin, everyone he'd lost. The stone could bring them back. Could let him see them, talk to them, hold them one more time. No. Harry's voice came out ragged. "That's not how this works. That's never how this works." The compulsion recoiled. Not defeated. It would never be defeated. Not really, but pushed back. Held at bay by 17 years of grief, and the bone, deep knowledge that the dead were meant to stay dead. The second layer was the withering curse. The thing that had blackened Dumbledore's hand. That had spread through his body over the course of a year. That had killed him slowly and painfully, even as he planned his own death to serve the greater good. Harry couldn't counter that curse. Didn't have the magical knowledge or the raw power to unravel something Dumbledore himself had barely survived. But he didn't need to counter it. He just needed to not touch the ring. Harry pulled a pair of dragonhide gloves from his pocket. They'd cost him 3 months of allowance and a favor to a Nocturne Alley vendor who'd asked too many questions about why a child needed professional curse-breaking equipment. But dragonhide was resistant to most magical effects, and these gloves had been enchanted specifically for handling cursed objects. He put them on, flexed his fingers, reached for the ring. The compulsion screamed at him, "You are me, U-S-E me, S-E-E Tamagian." Harry's hand closed around the cold metal, and he pulled the ring from its box. Pain lanced up his arm, not the withering curse, but something else. A defensive ward, triggered by contact, trying to force him to drop the ring. Harry gritted his teeth and held on. "I know what you are," he said to the ring, to the fragment of soul trapped inside it. "I know what you did, and I'm going to destroy you." The ring seemed to pulse in his grip. Angry, afraid. Good, it should be afraid. Harry carried the ring outside, away from the collapsing shack, into the overgrown garden where Merope Gaunt had once pined for a Muggle boy who'd never love her back. The irony wasn't lost on him. Tom Riddle's obsession with purity, and his mother had been so desperate for Muggle attention, she'd used a love potion to get it. The ring went on a flat stone. Harry stepped back, raised his wand, a practice wand, technically, sold to children for pre-Hogwarts training, and pointed it at the gleaming black surface. This was the hard part. Fiendfire was one of the only forces capable of destroying a Horcrux. It was also one of the most dangerous spells in existence. A cursed flame that consumed everything in its path and answered to no one once it was unleashed. Adult wizards had died trying to control it. Entire buildings had been reduced to ash, and Harry was about to cast it with a training wand and a 6-year-old's magical core. He'd practiced. Merlin, had he practiced. Hours in the Tonk's garden, working on fire spells, building up his control and his reserves. He'd pushed his small body to its limits and beyond, had passed out from magical exhaustion more times than he could count. Andromeda thought he was just an enthusiastic student. She didn't know he was training for war. Harry closed his eyes, reached for his magic, found it waiting, eager, ready. "Fiend fire," he whispered. The flames that erupted from his wand were nothing like he remembered. In his other life, watching Crabbe die in the room of requirement, the fiend fire had been a roaring inferno of serpents and dragons, hungry and uncontrollable. This was smaller, weaker. A stream of cursed fire barely larger than his arm, twisting and writhing as it sought something to consume. Harry directed it at the ring. The Horcrux screamed, not out loud. Harry's ears didn't hear anything, but his scar exploded with pain, and somewhere in the back of his mind he felt Tom Riddle's fragment realize it was dying. The soul piece thrashed against its container, tried to escape, tried to possess Harry the way it had possessed Ginny through the diary. Harry's occlumency shields held. Barely. The ring melted. The black stone cracked. And then, with a final shriek that existed only in Harry's head, the Horcrux was gone. Harry collapsed. He didn't pass out, not completely. But his vision went gray and his legs gave out, and he found himself lying in the dead grass, staring up at a sky that was spinning much too fast. Magical exhaustion. He'd pushed too hard, too fast, had burned through reserves he didn't have to spare. His body felt hollow, empty, like someone had scooped out everything that made him alive and left only the shell behind. But the ring was destroyed, one Horcrux down. 5 to go. Harry laughed. It came out as more of a wheeze, but he didn't care. "Take that, Tom," he whispered to the empty garden. 1 down. The resurrection stone lay in the ashes of the ring, cracked down the middle. The deathly hollow was broken, its power shattered along with the soul fragment that had corrupted it. Harry felt a pang of something like regret. In another timeline, that stone had let him walk to his death, surrounded by the people he loved. But he pushed it away. The dead were meant to stay dead, and Harry had work to do. He lay there for a long time, watching the clouds drift overhead, waiting for his magic to recover enough that he could move. The sun tracked across the sky. Birds sang in the trees. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. Normal sounds, normal world, like nothing had changed at all. But everything had changed. Harry had just destroyed his first Horcrux, years ahead of schedule, without anyone's help. He'd proven it could be done. Now he just had to do it 4 more times. Getting home was a nightmare. Harry had apparated to Little Hangleton, sighed, along with Andromeda, who thought they were visiting a historical site for his studies. She'd agreed to leave him alone for an hour while she ran errands in a nearby village. That hour was almost up, and Harry could barely walk. He forced himself to his feet, stumbled through the overgrown garden, one hand on the fence for balance. Every step sent spikes of exhaustion through his body, his magical core screaming for rest that he couldn't give it. The meeting point was half a mile away. Harry made it in 20 minutes, arriving just as Andromeda appeared with a soft crack of apparition. "Harry!" She was at his side in an instant, her hands checking him for injuries. "What happened? You look terrible. Explored too much." Harry leaned into her support, letting her take some of his weight. "Got tired. I think I pushed my magic practicing that Lumos spell you taught me." It wasn't a lie. Not exactly. He had been practicing Lumos. Just not today. Andromeda's face creased with worry. "You need to be more careful. Your core is still developing. Pushing too hard could damage it permanently." "I know. I'm sorry." she sighed, alonged him home. Harry collapsed into bed and slept for 14 hours straight. When he woke, Tunks was sitting in the chair by his window, her hair a worried shade of gray. "You scared us," she said. "Thought you were dying." "I wasn't dying." Harry pushed himself up against the headboard. His body still felt weak, but the hollow emptiness was fading. Just tired, he says. Tunks stood and started pacing, her hair flickering through colors with each step. "Harry, you passed out." "Actually passed out. You slept for 14 hours. That's not just tired, that's magical exhaustion." Harry finished. "I know, I pushed too hard." "Why?" Tunks stopped pacing and fixed him with a stare. "You're 6. What could possibly be so important that you'd hurt yourself practicing?" Harry looked at her, really looked at her, at this girl who would grow up to be an horror, who would fight in a war she didn't know was coming, who would die in that war alongside her husband, while her infant son waited at home. He couldn't tell her the truth, couldn't explain that he was trying to save her life, trying to save everyone's lives, trying to prevent a future that would destroy everything they loved. But he could give her something. A piece of it. "I had a dream," he said slowly. "A bad dream, about Voldemort." Tunks flinched at the name. Most people did. "He's not really gone." Harry continued. "I know everyone thinks he is, but he's not. He's out there somewhere, waiting. And when he comes back, he's going to hurt people. A lot of people. And I—" His voice cracked. "I can't just sit here and do nothing. I can't wait for someone else to fix it. I have to be ready." Tunks was quiet for a long moment. Her hair had settled into a deep blue, thoughtful and sad. "You're 6, she said finally. "I know. You shouldn't have to worry about this stuff. You should be playing and making friends and being a kid." "I know. But you're not going to stop, are you?" It wasn't really a question. "I can't." Harry met her eyes. "If I stop, people die. Maybe not today, maybe not for years, but eventually. And I won't let that happen. Not if there's anything I can do to prevent it." Tunks stared at him for a long time. Then she sat down on the edge of his bed and took his hand. "Okay," she said. "Then I'm going to help you." Harry blinked. "What?" "You heard me. If you're going to do something stupid and dangerous, you're not doing it alone." Her hair shifted to a determined purple. "I start Hogwarts next year. I'm going to learn everything I can. Defense, dueling, all of it. And when the time comes, whatever you're planning, I'm going to be there." "Tunks, don't argue with me, Potter." She squeezed his hand. "You're my brother. Maybe not by blood, but by everything that matters. And family sticks together." Harry felt something warm bloom in his chest. In his other life, he'd always fought alone. Even with Ron and Hermione beside him, he'd kept the worst burdens to himself, had faced the darkest moments in isolation. Maybe this time could be different. "Okay," he said. "Together." Tunks grinned. "Together. Now get some more sleep. You still look like death." She left, and Harry lay back against his pillows, staring at the ceiling. 1 Horcrux down. 5 to go. And now he had an ally, a real ally. Someone who knew at least part of the truth. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. The next 2 years were a careful balance of preparation and patience. Harry couldn't move too fast. Destroying the ring had nearly killed him, and his magical core needed time to recover and grow before he could attempt another Horcrux. Andromeda watched him like a hawk after the little Hangleton incident, and any suspicious behavior would raise questions he couldn't answer. So he played the long game. During the day, Harry was a model child. He studied the subjects Andromeda assigned him, practiced his magic within acceptable limits, played with Tunks when she was home from Hogwarts on holidays. He made friends with other children in the neighborhood. Muggle children, mostly, since the wizarding world's pureblood families kept their offspring isolated. But at night, when the house was quiet and everyone else was asleep, Harry continued his real education. The Tunks' library was extensive. Andromeda had inherited books from her black family days, dark texts that she'd never gotten rid of, either from sentiment or from a practical understanding that knowledge was valuable regardless of its source. Harry read them all: Defense Against the Dark Arts, Curse Breaking, Horcrux Theory, though the actual word was never used. He learned about soul magic, about the prices it demanded and the protections it required. He learned that Horcruxes were just one method of immortality, and that there were others, some more terrible, some more tragic. And he learned about the Blacks. The family that had produced Bellatrix Lestrange and Narcissa Malfoy had also produced Sirius and Andromeda. The same blood that had tortured the Longbottoms into insanity had fought against Voldemort in both wars. The Blacks were a study in contradictions, in how the same heritage could create both heroes and monsters. Regulus Black had been both. Harry found the story, buried in Andromeda's journals. Private writings she'd kept during the First War, documenting her estrangement from her family and her growing horror at what they'd become. Regulus had been the good son, the heir, the one who'd followed his parents' expectations and joined the Death Eaters at 17. And then, sometime in 1979, he'd disappeared. The official story was that Voldemort had killed him for trying to leave. But Andromeda's journals hinted at something else. Regulus had discovered something, she'd written. Something about Voldemort's secret. He told Kreacher to do something, and then he went away and never came back. Kreacher. The Black family house elf. The same elf who, in Harry's other timeline, had eventually revealed the truth about the locket Horcrux. Harry needed to talk to Kreacher. The problem was access. Grimmauld Place, the Black family home, was under Sirius's ownership, but Sirius was in Azkaban. The house was sealed, protected by wards that wouldn't recognize Harry as family, unless he could convince someone who was family to take him there. Andromeda, Harry said one evening, when they were alone in the library. "Can I ask you something?" She looked up from her correspondence. "Of course." "What happened to your brother?" "Regulus." Andromeda's face went very still. "Why do you want to know about Regulus?" "I found references in some of the books. To the Black family, the war, the people who fought on both sides." Harry kept his voice casual, curious. "You never talk about him?" "No," Andromeda said slowly. "I don't." She set down her quill. For a long moment, she just looked at Harry, studying him, evaluating him, trying to decide how much to say. "Regulus was my baby brother," she said finally. 3 years younger than me. When I left the family, when I chose Ted over my parents' expectations, Regulus was 15. Just a boy. He begged me not to go. "But you went anyway." "I had to." Andromeda's voice was quiet. "I loved Ted. I couldn't live the life my parents wanted for me, couldn't marry some pure-blood stranger and pretend to believe in their ideology. So I left, and Regulus stayed, became a Death Eater." "Yes." The word was heavy with old grief. He was 17 when he took the mark. My mother was so proud. My father threw a celebration, and I mourned him like he was already dead. Harry waited, but then something changed. Andromeda's hands twisted in her lap. A few months before he disappeared, Regulus reached out to me, just once. A single letter, delivered by Kreacher in the middle of the night. What did it say? That he was sorry. That he'd been wrong. That he was going to try to make things right, and that if he failed, I should look after Kreacher. Andromeda's eyes glistened. That was the last I ever heard from him. Do you know what he was trying to make right? No, but Creature might. Andromeda's voice hardened. The elf was devoted to Regulus. Whatever my brother was doing, Creature was part of it. But he won't speak to me. He considers me a blood traitor, unworthy of Black family secrets. Harry's mind was racing. Creature wouldn't talk to Andromeda, but would he talk to Harry? As the godson of Sirius Black, Harry had some claim to the family connection. And if he could earn the elf's trust, what if I tried? Harry asked. To talk to Creature, I mean. Andromeda frowned. Harry, the elf is bound to Grimmauld Place. You'd have to go there, and the wards. Would they recognize me? As Sirius's godson? The question hung in the air. Andromeda's frown deepened, but Harry could see her thinking it through. Possibly, she admitted. The Black family wards are blood-based, but they also recognize magical bonds. Godparent relationships are significant in pure blood tradition. There's a chance the wards would accept you as an extension of Sirius's line. Then let's try. Harry, this isn't a game. Grimmauld Place has been sealed for years. There could be dangers we don't know about, curses or creatures. I know. Harry met her eyes. But Regulus was trying to do something important. Something worth dying for. Don't you want to know what it was? Andromeda was silent for a long moment. Then she sighed. You're going to be the death of me, Harry Potter. I hope not. Harry smiled. But I'm going to find out what happened to Regulus, with or without help. With, Andromeda said firmly. Definitely with. Grimmauld Place was exactly as depressing as Harry remembered. The townhouse loomed between its muggle neighbors, invisible to non-magical eyes, covered in grime and neglect. The windows were dark. The door was black with age. And the wards that surrounded it pulsed with a cold, unwelcoming energy. Harry stood on the sidewalk, Andromeda at his side, and tried to project confidence he didn't entirely feel. The wards will test you, Andromeda murmured. They'll probe your magic, your intentions. If they find you wanting, they'll attack. And if they accept me, then the door will open. She hesitated. Harry, are you sure about this? I'm sure. Harry stepped forward. The ward hit him like a wall of ice. He felt it sliding through his mind, examining his memories, his magical signature, his connection to the Black family. It found his bond to Sirius, weak, stretched thin by years and imprisonment, and pulled. Pain. Not physical pain, but something deeper. The ward was demanding proof of his right to enter, and Harry didn't have proof. Just a relationship that existed more in intention than in fact. But he also had something else. A piece of Voldemort's soul, still lodged in his scar. The ward recoiled. For a moment, Harry thought it would reject him, would slam closed and refuse entry. But then it seemed to reconsider. The Black family had always been allied with the dark. Voldemort's followers had walked these halls many times. And the ward, ancient and stupid, couldn't tell the difference between a willing ally and an unwilling host. The door swung open. Harry. Andromeda's voice was sharp with concern. What happened? You went pale as a ghost. The ward accepted me. Harry kept his voice steady even as his heart raced. I'm not sure why, but it let me in. He stepped through the doorway. The smell hit him first. Dust and decay and something else. Something organic and rotting. The hallway was dark, lit only by the light filtering through the open door. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling. Paintings lined the walls, their subjects hidden beneath years of grime.
Fiach! Modi beloads!
Tiraitoars ekhaselhi ofamui fetuars, the portrait of Walburga Black had activated. Harry had forgotten about that, about the permanent sticking charm that kept her on the wall, about the screaming fits she threw whenever anyone entered. In his other timeline, they'd eventually found a way to silence her, but that knowledge was years away. DSKUSTAAKLF Balodes. Selagi THE Nabielv Os Obalasahi IJR Parasan Still Osteopua Harry roared, and his magic lashed out before he could stop it. The portrait went silent. Not destroyed. Harry could still see Wahlberg's painted face, mouth moving soundlessly, but muted. The magic that gave her voice had been suppressed, wrapped in layers of Harry's own power. Andromeda stared at him.
How did you do that?
I don't know. It was true. Harry hadn't meant to do anything, had just reacted to the noise with a burst of frustrated magic. But at least it's quiet now. Harry, that portrait has a permanent sticking charm and voice projection enchantments that have resisted every attempt at removal for centuries. You just silenced it with a word. I was motivated. Andromeda didn't laugh. Her expression was troubled, assessing. The same look she got when Harry did something that didn't fit with what a child his age should be capable of. Harry filed that away as a problem for later. Right now he had an elf to find. Creature, he called into the darkness. I need to speak with you. Silence. Then a soft pop, and a creature materialized from the shadows. Creature looked terrible. His skin was gray and wrinkled, his ears drooping, his eyes sunken deep in their sockets. He wore a filthy pillowcase that might once have been white, and his body was bent with age and neglect. Blood traitor's brat, he croaked, staring at Andromeda with undisguised hatred. Mudblood, lover's spawn. What brings such filth to the noble house of Black? Creature. Harry stepped forward, drawing the elf's attention. I'm Harry Potter. Sirius Black's godson. Creature's eyes flickered to Harry, then away. Master Sirius is a traitor, a disgrace to the family name. Creature does not serve traitors, but you served Regulus. Harry kept his voice gentle. You served him until the end, and I think you know something about what he was doing when he died. The effect was immediate. Creature's whole body shuddered, and something like grief crossed his ancient face. Master Regulus, he whispered. Good master. Kind master. The only one who treated Creature like he was worth something. Tell me what happened to him. Harry knelt, bringing himself to the elf's eye level. I want to help finish what he started. Creature's eyes met Harry's. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then the elf began to cry. The story came out in pieces, broken by sobs and wails and centuries of elf grief that had been bottled up for nearly 7 years. Voldemort had needed an elf, had needed a test subject for protections. He was building around something precious, something hidden. Creature had been volunteered by Regulus, loyal Death Eater that he was, and Creature had gone because Master Regulus commanded it. The cave, the boat, the basin of poison. Creature had drunk it all, every drop, while the Dark Lord watched and waited. And then Voldemort had left him there to die, assuming the elf would drown in the Lake of Inferi. But Creature hadn't died. He'd apparated home, as house elves could do regardless of wards or protections. And he'd told Master Regulus everything. Master Regulus was angry. Creature wept. So angry. He said the Dark Lord had gone too far, had broken something sacred. He made Creature take him to the cave. Made Creature watch while he drank the poison himself. Harry's throat was tight. He knew this story, had lived through the echoes of it in his other life. But hearing it from Creature made it real in a way it hadn't been before. He switched the lockets, Harry said. Regulus took the Dark Lord's locket and left a fake. Yes. Creature's voice was barely audible. Master Regulus ordered Creature to take the locket and destroy it. To leave him there. To not look back. But you couldn't destroy it. Creature tried. The elf's hands twisted in his pillowcase. Tried everything. Nothing worked. Creature is a failure. Creature could not fulfill Master Regulus's final command. Harry reached out and took the elf's hands. They were cold, clammy, trembling with decades of grief and guilt. "You're not a failure, Creature." The locket was protected by magic that no one could break. Not elves, not wizards, not anything normal. But I know how to destroy it, and I'm going to finish what Regulus started. Creature's eyes widened. You know how to destroy the Dark Lord's treasure. I do, but I need your help. I need you to give me the locket. For a moment, Harry thought Creature would refuse. The elf's face twisted through a dozen emotions. Hope, fear, suspicion, longing, before finally settling on something like desperate trust. "The locket is hidden," Creature said. Creature kept it safe, kept it secret. Even from the thief who came to steal Black family treasures. Mundungus Fletcher. Creature spat on the floor. Filthy thief. Creature caught him taking Master Regulus's things. But the locket was hidden. The thief never found it. "Where is it now?" Creature hesitated. Then he snapped his fingers, and a tarnished silver locket materialized in his hands. Slytherin's locket. The real one. With the serpentine S on its face and the sole fragment of Tom Riddle trapped inside. Harry could feel it from 3 feet away, a cold, oily presence that made his scar prickle with recognition. "Creature has kept it for 7 years," the elf whispered, "waiting for someone who could finish Master Regulus's work. Can you really destroy it?"
Wes!
Harry held out his hands. "I can, and I will." Creature placed the locket in Harry's palms. The Horcrux screamed. Not out loud. Harry's ears heard nothing, but in his mind, in his soul. In the connection that bound him to every piece of Tom Riddle's fractured spirit. The locket recognized him, recognized the fragment in his scar, and it was afraid. Harry closed his fingers around the cold metal and smiled. 2 down, he murmured. 4 to go. Destroying the locket was going to require preparation. Harry couldn't repeat the Fiendfire approach. His magical core still hadn't fully recovered from the ring, and attempting cursed fire again so soon might kill him. He needed another method. Something that could destroy a Horcrux without requiring more power than his 6-year-old body could provide. The answer, when it came to him, was almost insultingly simple. Basilisk venom. The Chamber of Secrets held a 1,000-year-old serpent with fangs full of the most destructive substance in the magical world. In his other timeline, Harry had used one of those fangs to destroy the diary. The venom had eaten through the Horcrux like acid through paper. He just had to get to the chamber and kill the basilisk at age 7. "You're insane," Tonks said flatly when Harry explained his plan. She was home for Christmas holidays, 15 years old and already showing signs of the horror she'd become. Actually, genuinely insane. A basilisk, Harry. Do you know what those things can do? Kill with a look. Petrify through indirect eye contact. Venomous fangs that can destroy nearly anything. Harry ticked off the dangers on his fingers. "I know. That's why I need to be careful." "Careful? You need to be not doing this at all." Tonks grabbed his shoulders and shook him. "You're 7. 7? You're supposed to be playing with toy broomsticks and eating too many sweets, not planning to fight legendary monsters." "Tonks. No, I'm putting my foot down." Her hair had gone a furious red. "You've been doing things, secret things. I've noticed, even if Mum hasn't. You sneak around at night. You read books that would give most adults nightmares. And now you want to fight a basilisk. I have to." Harry's voice came out quieter than he intended. "There's something in the chamber that I need. Something that can help me stop Voldemort. And I can't wait for someone else to get it for me."
Then tell someone.
"Tell Dumbledore. Tell the Ministry. They wouldn't believe me. And even if they did, they'd take over. They'd make decisions for me. Control everything, turn me into a weapon for their own purposes. Harry met her eyes. I've seen what happens when powerful people decide they know what's best for me. I'm not letting it happen again. Tonks stared at him for a long moment. Her hair faded from red to a troubled blue. You talk like you've lived through this before, she said slowly. Harry's heart stopped. Sometimes you say things that don't make sense for someone your age. You know things you shouldn't know, and the way you talk about the future, about Voldemort coming back, it's like you've already seen it happen. Tonks, I'm not going to ask. She held up a hand. Whatever's going on with you, I trust you. I've trusted you since you showed up on our doorstep, looking like death warmed over. But Harry, her voice cracked, you're my brother. If you die fighting a basilisk because you wouldn't let anyone help you, I will never forgive you. I'm not going to die. Promise me. I promise. Harry reached out and took her hand. I'm not going to die, Tonks. I've got too much left to do. She squeezed his fingers hard enough to hurt. Fine. Then I'm coming with you. What? You heard me? If you're going to do something this stupid, you're not doing it alone. Her chin lifted. I've got 3 years of Hogwarts under my belt. I'm top of my year in defense. And I can change my face so the basilisk can't kill me with a look. You need backup. I'm it. Harry wanted to argue. Wanted to protect her, to keep her safe. To handle this himself like he'd handled everything else. But Tonks was looking at him with that stubborn expression he'd come to know so well, and Harry realized that arguing would be pointless. She'd made up her mind. She was coming. And maybe, just maybe, that wasn't the worst thing in the world. Okay, he said, together. Tonks grinned. Together. Getting into Hogwarts during the school year was the easy part. Andromeda was a black, which meant she still had access to certain family resources. One of those resources was a portkey hidden in Grimmauld Place, keyed to a secret entrance near the Hogwarts grounds. The Blacks have been sneaking into Hogwarts for centuries, she'd explained when Harry asked about it. For pranks, for sabotage, for romantic assignations. The headmasters have never managed to find this entrance. The portkey deposited Harry and Tonks in a cave mouth half a mile from the castle. It was February, cold and dark, with snow crunching under their feet as they made their way through the forbidden forest. I can't believe I'm doing this, Tonks muttered, her hair shifting nervously between colors. Sneaking into my own school to help my 7-year-old brother fight a giant snake. This is not what I had planned for my holiday. You can still go back. Shut up. They reached the castle without incident. The entrance Harry needed was on the 2nd floor, a bathroom that no one ever used, because it was haunted by a particularly miserable ghost. Myrtle wasn't there when they arrived. The bathroom was empty, silent except for the drip of leaky faucets. Harry crossed to the sink he remembered, the one with the tiny snake carved into the copper tap, and took a deep breath. Tonks. Whatever happens down there, don't look the basilisk in the eyes. Not directly, not in a reflection, not at all. Keep your gaze on the ground and trust your other senses. I know. She'd shifted her face into something strange. Eyes replaced with flat patches of skin, like a mask. I've been practicing. Echolocation, sort of. It's weird, but it works. Harry nodded. Then he faced the sink and opened his mouth. Open. The word came out as a hiss. Parseltongue, the language of serpents, flowing from his lips like it belonged there. The sink shuddered, pipes groaning, and then the whole assembly was sinking into the floor, revealing a large pipe that descended into darkness. Well, Tonks said, that's not ominous at all. They jumped. The slide down was longer than Harry remembered, maybe because he was smaller now, or maybe because he was paying more attention. They shot through twisting pipes, past branches and junctions, until finally they tumbled out onto a floor covered in animal bones. The chamber's antechamber. Harry picked himself up and surveyed the space. It looked just as he remembered. The circular door with its serpent locks, the scattered skeletons of small animals, rats, birds, things the basilisk had eaten over the centuries, the musty smell of enclosed space and ancient magic. Open. Harry hissed again, and the door spiraled open. The chamber of secrets spread before them. It was vast. Stone pillars carved with serpents rose toward a ceiling lost in shadow. A shallow channel of water ran down the center of the chamber, reflecting the greenish light that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. And at the far end, Harry. Tonk's voice was tight. There's something alive down here. Harry could feel it too. A presence, ancient and cold and hungry. The basilisk was here, waiting in the darkness, sensing intruders in its domain.
Stay behind me,
Harry said. And whatever you do, don't run. He walked forward. The chamber seemed to stretch as he moved through it. Every step echoed off the stone walls. Every breath was loud in the silence. Harry kept his eyes on the floor, watching for movement, listening for the scrape of scales on stone. Speak to me, Slytherin, greatest of the Hogwarts Four. The words came out before Harry could stop them. Old instinct. Old memory. He'd heard Tom Riddle say those words in his second year, had watched the mouth of Slytherin's statue open to release the monster within. Stone grinding on stone, a hiss that seemed to come from everywhere at once. And then, movement. Harry threw himself to the side as the basilisk struck. Its massive head slammed into the stone where he'd been standing, cratering the floor with the force of impact. Harry rolled, came up with his wand raised, and fired a blinding hex at the serpent's face. The spell splashed uselessly against scales harder than armor. Harry! Tonks was casting too. Stunning spells, cutting curses, anything she could think of. None of it penetrated the basilisk's hide. The serpent reared back, its mouth opening to reveal fangs as long as Harry's arm. Its eyes. Harry could see them in his peripheral vision, yellow and terrible, swept across the chamber, searching for prey. "Don't look!" Harry shouted. "Keep moving!" He ran. The basilisk followed. Through the columns, across the water channel, around the edges of the chamber. Harry led the serpent on a chase, buying time to think. His wand was useless against its scales. He couldn't look at its eyes. He was 7 years old, facing a monster that had terrorized Hogwarts for 1,000 years. But he wasn't helpless.
Basilisk.
Harry hissed in Parseltongue. "Stop." The serpent hesitated. Its massive head swiveled toward him, nostrils flaring as it caught his scent. Harry could see the confusion in its movements, the uncertainty of a creature that had never been commanded by anyone but its master. "I am not your enemy," Harry continued. "The one who controlled you is gone. Slytherin is dead. Riddle is destroyed. You don't have to serve anyone anymore." The basilisk's tongue flickered out, tasting the air. Its eyes. Harry kept his gaze fixed firmly on the ground, seemed to dim slightly. "Lies," it hissed back. "The master's voice spoke to me. Commands me still. You are not the master. The master is a fragment," Harry said. "A piece of a broken soul, trapped in an object. He doesn't care about you. He only cares about using you. The master promised freedom, promised hunting grounds beyond these walls, promised prey worthy of my hunger. And has he delivered?" Harry risked a step closer. "You've been trapped down here for 1,000 years. When was the last time you hunted freely? When was the last time you felt sunlight?" The basilisk was silent. "I can give you what he never could. Harry continued, I can give you death. True death, not this endless existence in darkness. Peace after a millennium of servitude. You would kill me. If you ask me to. If that's what you want. The great serpent lowered its head. Harry could feel its breath on his face. Hot and fetid, smelling of decay and venom. This close, one snap of those jaws would end him. I am tired, the basilisk said, and its voice was old. So old. Tired of the darkness. Tired of the master's commands. Tired of existing without purpose. Then let me end it, Harry whispered. Let me give you peace. The serpent's eyes closed. Do it, speaker. End my suffering. Harry raised his wand. He didn't know if any spell he could cast would penetrate the basilisk's hide. But with the creature cooperating, with its defenses lowered, he might have a chance. Reducto, he said, pouring every ounce of magic he had into the spell. The curse hit the basilisk's skull at point-blank range. For a moment, nothing happened. Then cracks appeared in the ancient scales, spreading, widening, letting light into the darkness beneath. The basilisk shuddered once, twice, and then went still. Harry collapsed to his knees, his magical reserves completely emptied. Harry! Tunks was at his side in an instant, her modified face shifting back to normal as she checked him for injuries. Are you okay? What happened? Did you negotiate with it? I was tired, Harry managed. His voice sounded distant to his own ears. It just wanted to rest. You're bloody insane? But Tunks was smiling, relieved and proud and slightly hysterical. You're absolutely insane, and I love you. Harry let her help him to his feet. The basilisk's corpse stretched across the chamber floor, massive and still, finally at peace after 1,000 years of captivity. And in its mouth, glistening with venom, were the fangs Harry needed. Extracting the fangs was delicate work. Basilisk venom remained potent for centuries after death. The fangs would be useful long after Harry was done with the Horcruxes. He carefully removed 2 of the largest, wrapping them in conjured cloth to prevent accidental contact. What are you going to do with those? Tonks asked, watching him work. Destroy something dangerous. Harry tucked the fangs into his bag, something that could bring Voldemort back if it's not dealt with. Another Horcrux. Harry's head snapped up. How do you know that word? Tunk's expression was complicated. I've been doing research. Since you started talking about Voldemort not really being dead. There aren't many ways to survive death, and most of them are theoretical. But Horcruxes, she shuddered. That's real. That's documented, if you know where to look. Where did you look? The Black Library. After you got Creature to give you that locket. Her eyes met his. I'm not stupid, Harry. You've been hunting pieces of his soul, haven't you? Harry was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. How many are there? 6, originally. Plus the piece still attached to him. Harry's hand went to his forehead, to the scar that had marked him since infancy. I've destroyed 2. The locket will be 3, and there are 3 more out there. What about the piece in you? Harry froze. I told you I've been researching. Tunk's voice was gentle. The connection you have to him. The Parseltongue. The way you knew about the chamber. It makes sense, if you're carrying a fragment of his soul. Does Dumbledore know? Dumbledore suspects. Harry's voice was hollow. But he doesn't know everything. No one does. Except you. Except me? Tonks was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and pulled Harry into a hug. Well, figure it out, she said. Whatever it takes to get that thing out of you, we'll figure it out. You're not doing this alone anymore. Harry let himself lean into her embrace. Let himself, for just a moment, stop being the one with all the answers and be a child who needed comfort. Thank you, he whispered. Family, Tonks said simply. That's what family does. They destroyed the locket that night, back at Grimold Place. In the kitchen, where Creature watched with tears streaming down his face, Harry drove a basilisk fang through the heart of Slytherin's artifact. The Horcrux screamed, louder than the ring, more desperate, and black smoke poured from the shattered metal as Tom Riddle's soul fragment was torn apart. Creature fell to his knees. "It is done," he wept. "Master Regulus's final command. Creature has fulfilled it." After all these years, Harry knelt beside the elf and put a hand on his shoulder. "Regulus would be proud of you. You kept the locket safe. You waited until someone could destroy it. That was brave, Creature. That was loyal." The elf looked up at him with ancient, tear-filled eyes. "The speaker is kind. Kinder than Creature deserves." "You deserve kindness. You've earned it." Harry stood. "Now I need you to do something else for me. Something important. Anything." Creature straightened, a new light in his eyes. "Creature will serve the speaker. Creature will help destroy the Dark Lord's remaining treasures. I need you to watch Malfoy Manor." Harry's voice hardened. "There's another Horcrux there. A diary. Voldemort gave it to Lucius Malfoy for safekeeping. I need to know where it is, who has access to it, and when the best time would be to retrieve it." Creature knows Malfoy Manor. The elf's face twisted with something like anticipation. Creature knows where the dark things are hidden. Creature will find the diary. Be careful. Don't let them catch you. Creature is a black family elf. For the first time, a hint of pride entered his voice. No wizard catches Creature unless Creature wishes to be caught. He disappeared with a crack. Tonks slumped into a chair, exhaustion finally catching up with her. "So, what's next on the agenda? Dragons? Dementors? Maybe a nice, relaxing invasion of the Ministry." Harry looked at the shattered remains of the locket, at the basilisk fang still gleaming with venom, at the doorway where Creature had vanished. "We wait," he said. "We plan, and when Creature finds the diary, we move. That simple, huh?" "Nothing about this is simple." Harry sat down across from her. "But we're making progress. 3 Horcruxes down, 3 to go. Plus the piece in my head, but we'll deal with that later. And Voldemort. The actual Voldemort, not just his soul fragments. Is still out there. Still a wraith, possessing animals and weak wizards, trying to find a way back to a body." Harry's jaw tightened. But without his Horcruxes, he's vulnerable. When he finally makes his move, and he will make his move, we'll be ready. Tonks was quiet for a moment. Then she reached across the table and took his hand. "You know what I keep thinking about? How you were supposed to grow up normal. Go to Hogwarts at 11, make friends, get in trouble, be a kid." Her grip tightened. "Instead you're hunting soul fragments and killing basilisks and planning for a war that hasn't started yet." "I had to." Harry's voice was soft. "Someone had to. I know. She trailed off, shaking her head. "I wish it didn't have to be you." "So do I." Harry squeezed her hand back. "But it is me, and I'm going to finish this. No matter what it takes." Outside, the first light of dawn was creeping over London. Harry watched it through the grimy windows of Grimold Place, feeling the weight of everything he still had to do pressing down on him. 3 Horcruxes down, 3 to go. And somewhere in Albania, a wraith that had once been the most feared Dark Lord in history was plotting its return. But Harry wasn't afraid. He'd faced death before, faced it and walked away. He'd destroyed monsters and soul fragments and the chains that had bound him to a cupboard under the stairs. He had family now, real family, people who would fight beside him when the time came. Voldemort was coming. Harry could feel it in his scar, in the cold prickle that never quite went away. But when he arrived, Harry would be ready. 2 weeks later, Creature returned with news. Harry was in the library at Grimold Place, poring over maps of Albania, when the elf appeared with a crack that nearly stopped his heart. "Creature has found it," the elf announced. "The diary. It is hidden in a secret compartment beneath the floor of Master Malfoy's study." Harry set down his quill. "You're sure it's the diary? Black leather, 50 years old, with the name T.M. Riddle on the cover. Creature is sure." The elf's eyes gleamed with something like satisfaction. Creature also heard Master Malfoy speaking to his wife. "He plans to use the diary against someone, to open the chamber again and rid the school of mudbloods." Harry's blood ran cold. Ginny. In the original timeline, Lucius had slipped the diary into Ginny, Weasley's cauldron at Flourish and Blotts, just before her first year at Hogwarts. The diary had possessed her, used her to open the Chamber of Secrets, nearly killed her before Harry managed to destroy it. That was still 4 years away, but if Lucius was already planning, when? Harry demanded. When is he planning to use it? Creature does not know exactly. Master Malfoy spoke of waiting for the right opportunity. He seemed to think it would take years to find the right target. Years. Harry had time then. Not much, not enough, but some. "Can you get me into the manor?" Harry asked, quietly, without triggering the wards. Creature hesitated. The manor's wards are strong. They would not recognize the speaker as family, but his ears twitched. Creature can move through elf passages, places wizards cannot see or sense. Creature could take the speaker through those passages, but it would be dangerous. How dangerous? If Master Malfoy caught the speaker, he would kill him, or worse. Harry considered this. He was 8 years old. His magical core had recovered from the basilisk encounter, but he was far from full strength. And Lucius Malfoy, for all his cowardice, was a dangerous wizard when cornered. But the diary couldn't be left in Death Eater hands. Not when Harry knew what it could do. What it would do if given the chance. "How soon can we go?" Creature's face split into a grim smile. "Whenever the speaker wishes." Malfoy Manor was beautiful and terrible. Harry had seen it before. In his other life. Had been dragged there by snatchers. Had watched Hermione tortured on the drawing room floor. But this was different. This was the manor in its prime, before the war, before Voldemort took up residence in its halls. White peacocks strutted across the manicured lawns. The house itself rose against the night sky like a fortress, all pale stone and Gothic spires. And wrapped around it, invisible but undeniable, were wards that would tear apart any unwanted visitor. Any wizard visitor, at least. Harry crouched in the shadows outside the manor's walls. Creature at his side. The elf passages begin at the servants' entrance. Creature whispered. Creature will guide the speaker. But inside, the speaker must be silent, must not be seen. I understand. They moved. The servants' entrance was a small door hidden behind a decorative hedge. Creature touched it and the wood rippled, revealing a narrow passage that seemed to exist between the walls themselves. Elf passages. Spaces wizards had never thought to ward, because they'd never imagined anyone would use them. Harry squeezed through the opening and found himself in a corridor that shouldn't exist. Too narrow for an adult, barely wide enough for an 8-year-old. He followed Creature through the darkness. The passage twisted and turned, climbing through the manor's structure like veins through a body. Harry caught glimpses of the house through gaps in the walls. Drawing rooms and bedrooms and hallways filled with dark artifacts. Once he heard voices and pressed himself flat against the wall until they passed. Finally, they reached their destination, Lucius Malfoy's study. Harry peered through a crack in the wall and saw the room beyond. Rich carpet, leather chairs, a massive desk covered in papers and quills, and beneath that desk, invisible to casual observation, a secret compartment. "The diary is there," Creature breathed. Creature can feel the dark magic. So could Harry. His scar was prickling, responding to the Horcrux's presence. The piece of Voldemort's soul in his head recognized its sibling, was reaching out to it with a connection Harry couldn't quite suppress. He had to move fast. The longer he stayed, the greater the chance of detection. "Wait here," Harry whispered. "If something goes wrong, get out. Don't try to save me." "The speaker is brave," Creature said, "and foolish." "I know." Harry slipped through the passage opening into the study. The room was empty. Lucius was elsewhere in the manor, probably dining or entertaining guests. Harry had maybe 15 minutes before anyone came to check on the study. He crossed to the desk, knelt, ran his hands along the underside until he found the catch. The compartment clicked open. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a black leather diary. Harry picked it up. The Horcrux screamed into his mind, "WHORYOU." The voice was Tom Riddle's, but younger, colder. The diary had been created from an earlier version of Voldemort's soul, before the face had gone completely inhuman, before the eyes had turned red. "Had you dar you to you me shut up?" Harry hissed, and shoved the diary into his bag. He could feel it fighting, trying to break through his occlumency shields, trying to find purchase in his mind. It couldn't. Harry's shields were forged from experience, from surviving the original possession attempt, from 17 years of learning to protect his thoughts from intrusion. The diary battered against them and found nothing but walls. "White." The voice changed, grew curious instead of angry. "Why you have a paisi for you? I can fifel a ere berbashars who and I were nothing alike. Beauty boyeri. T semasul. T samayan a and we can be baboyali to oghr." Harry pulled the basilisk fang from his bag. The diary's presence in his mind went from curious to terrified in an instant. "No, Debra can meki adl. I have can obrldg. Pabuar twian gseo cooldi ever no n euro wn." Harry drove the fang through the diary's cover. The scream was audible this time. Black ink poured from the wound like blood, spreading across the desk, dripping onto the carpet. The diary thrashed in Harry's grip, pages flapping wildly, and then silence. The Horcrux was dead. Harry stood in Lucius Malfoy's study, breathing hard, ink dripping from his hands, 4 down. 2 to go, and then the door opened. "What?" Lucius Malfoy stood in the doorway, his face white with shock. "WRYOU, HWIWOU har." Harry didn't think, just moved. He grabbed the diary and ran, not for the elf passage. That would give away Creature's existence, but for the window. His magic surged, shattering the glass, and Harry threw himself through the opening into the night air. He hit the ground hard, rolled, came up running as spells exploded behind him.
I enter order! Wards!
The manor's defenses came alive. The grass itself tried to grab him, hedges reaching with thorny branches, the very air thickening to slow him down. Harry felt the magic pressing in from all sides, trying to trap him, trying to hold him until Malfoy could arrive and finish him off. But Harry had something Lucius Malfoy didn't. "Creature!" The elf appeared beside him mid-stride, grabbed his arm. And then the world twisted, and they were gone. And reappearing in the middle of Grimmauld Place's kitchen. Harry collapsed against the table, gasping for breath. His hands were shaking. His scar was burning. And the destroyed diary lay on the floor beside him, still leaking black ink. "The speaker is safe," Creature said, his voice filled with something like wonder. The speaker escaped Malfoy Manor alive. Harry laughed. It came out slightly hysterical, but he didn't care. 4 down, he managed. 2 to go. He didn't know how long he sat there, recovering from the close call. But eventually the shaking stopped, and his breathing slowed, and Harry was able to think clearly again. He'd just broken into one of the most heavily warded homes in Britain, destroyed a Horcrux right under Lucius Malfoy's nose, and escaped before the Death Eater could catch him. Voldemort was going to be very, very angry when he found out. Good. Let him be angry. Let him realize that someone was hunting his soul fragments, destroying his path to immortality. Let him know fear for the first time in decades. Harry was coming for him, and nothing was going to stop him. The fallout came faster than Harry expected. 3 days after the manor break-in, the Daily Prophet ran a headline that made Harry's blood run cold. High Malfo Mano Rba Kamar La Ardas Arfarfc Stiolen. Harry read the article with growing unease. Lucius was spinning the story, claiming that a priceless family heirloom had been stolen by an unknown intruder. He was demanding a ministry investigation, calling for increased security measures, suggesting that the break-in might be connected to dangerous elements, targeting respectable pure-blood families. He didn't mention the diary specifically. Couldn't, without admitting he'd been harboring dark artifacts. But the message was clear. Lucius knew something valuable had been taken, and he wanted it back. "This is bad," Andromeda said, setting down the paper. "Lucius has connections everywhere. If he's pushing for an investigation, he can't prove anything." Harry kept his voice calm. "There's no evidence connecting me to the break-in. No witnesses, no magical signatures, nothing. Except that you've been asking questions about the Malfoys, about their collection, about artifacts they might be hiding." Andromeda's eyes were sharp. "Harry, what did you do?" Harry considered lying, considered deflecting, changing the subject, pretending nothing had happened. But Andromeda had taken him in when he had nothing, had protected him from Dumbledore, raised him like her own child, never once asked him to be anything other than what he was. She deserved the truth, or at least as much of it as Harry could give her. "I destroyed something," he said. "Something dangerous. Something that could have killed people if it stayed in Malfoy's hands." "What kind of something?" "I can't tell you that. Not yet. But I promise you what I did was necessary." Andromeda was silent for a long moment. Her face was unreadable. The black mask again, the one she wore when she was hiding her emotions. Then she sighed. "I knew this day would come," she said quietly. "The day you stopped being a child and started being whatever it is you're becoming. Andromeda, I'm not angry." She held up a hand. "Concerned, yes. Terrified for your safety. Absolutely. But not angry. You've always known more than you should, Harry. You've always been fighting something I couldn't see. And if what you're fighting is dangerous enough that you'd break into Malfoy Manor to stop it..." She trailed off, shaking her head. "I trust you. That's what family does." Harry felt something tight in his chest loosen. "Thank you," he said, "for everything."
Don't thank me yet.
Andromeda's expression hardened. "If Lucius connects you to this, there will be consequences. He has money, influence, friends in the ministry. He could make our lives very difficult. Let him try." Harry's voice came out colder than he intended. "Lucius Malfoy isn't as powerful as he thinks he is. And by the time he figures out what I've really done, it'll be too late." The next year passed in a blur of preparation and paranoia. Harry trained harder than ever, pushing his magical development to its limits. He practiced dueling with Tonks during her holidays, sparred with Ted in magical theory, absorbed everything Andromeda could teach him about pure-blood politics and dark wizard psychology. He turned 9, then 10. And through it all, he waited for the other shoe to drop. It dropped in late August. 3 weeks before Harry was scheduled to receive his Hogwarts letter, Andromeda had invited Amelia Bones for dinner, a regular occurrence, now that the head of magical law enforcement had become an ally in Harry's unorthodox guardianship situation. They were in the middle of dessert when Amelia set down her fork and fixed Harry with a serious look. "I need to tell you something," she said, "and you're not going to like it." Harry's stomach tightened. "What is it?" "Dumbledore has been making inquiries. About you, about your activities. About what you've been doing for the past 5 years." Amelia's voice was carefully neutral. "He's convinced that you're hiding something, that you have knowledge or abilities that aren't normal for a child your age. He's been saying that since I was 4. "Yes, but now he has evidence." Amelia pulled a folder from her bag and spread its contents on the table. "These are surveillance reports. Dumbledore has been having you watched, Harry. Discreetly, through intermediaries, but watched nonetheless." Harry looked at the papers. Photographs of him entering Diagon Alley. Records of books he'd borrowed from the Hogwarts library through Tonks. Notes on his movements, his conversations, his magical training. "He knows about the basilisk," Amelia continued. "Not the details, but enough. There were traces of ancient magic in the Chamber of Secrets. Traces that appeared around the same time you and Tonks were supposedly on holiday. How much does he know? Enough to be dangerous." Amelia's expression was grim. "Harry, Dumbledore isn't your enemy. I believe he genuinely wants to protect you. But his idea of protection involves control, keeping you close, keeping you compliant, making sure you follow his plans instead of your own." "I know." Harry kept his voice steady. "That's why I've been careful. Not careful enough." Amelia leaned forward. "He's going to make a move. Soon. Probably before you start Hogwarts. He wants you under his supervision, where he can watch you directly. And what do you suggest I do about it?" Amelia was silent for a moment. Then she smiled. A sharp, dangerous smile that reminded Harry why she'd risen to lead the DMLE. "I suggest you beat him to it. Make your move before he makes his." The meeting with Dumbledore happened 3 days later. Harry requested it himself, sending an owl to Hogwarts with a formal invitation to discuss his educational future. The phrasing was deliberate, polite enough to avoid offense, assertive enough to establish that Harry wasn't coming as a supplicant. They met in Amelia's office at the Ministry. Neutral ground, with a powerful witness. Dumbledore arrived precisely on time. He looked exactly as Harry remembered, the long beard, the half-moon spectacles, the twinkling blue eyes that saw far too much. But there was something different about him now, a wariness, maybe. A recognition that Harry wasn't the easily manipulated child he'd expected. "Harry," Dumbledore said warmly, "it's good to see you. You've grown considerably since our last meeting. 5 years will do that." Harry didn't smile. "Thank you for coming, Headmaster." "Of course. I understand you wanted to discuss your Hogwarts attendance." "Among other things." Harry gestured to a chair. "Please, sit. This might take a while." Dumbledore sat. His eyes swept the room, taking in Amelia at her desk, the closed door, the privacy wards shimmering in the air. "I see you've taken precautions," he observed. "Should I be concerned?" "That depends." Harry met his gaze directly. "Are you here to talk, or to manipulate?" The twinkle in Dumbledore's eyes dimmed. "Harry, I've only ever wanted what's best for you." "Note." Harry's voice was flat. "You've wanted what's best for the wizarding world. That's not the same thing." Silence. "I know about the surveillance," Harry continued. "I know you've been watching me, tracking my movements, building a file on my activities. And I know why. You're afraid. You've realized I'm not what you expected, and that scares you. I am concerned, Dumbledore admitted. You have demonstrated abilities far beyond what any child should possess. You have knowledge that seems to come from nowhere, and you have been active in ways that suggest you're pursuing goals I don't understand. Then let me help you understand. Harry leaned forward. Voldemort is not gone. He's weakened, reduced to a shadow, but he's still out there, and he's going to come back. Maybe in a year, maybe in 10, but he will come back. And when he does, he's going to find a world that's completely unprepared for him. Dumbledore's face had gone very still. How do you know this? Does it matter? The point is, I'm not going to sit around waiting for it to happen. I'm not going to let anyone, not you, not the Ministry, not anyone, stop me from preparing for that day. And what form does this preparation take? Harry smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. Horcruxes. The word hung in the air between them. Harry watched Dumbledore's reaction. The slight widening of his eyes, the barely perceptible intake of breath. You know what they are, Harry said. You've suspected for years, haven't you? That's how he survived that night. He split his soul, anchored himself to the mortal world through objects imbued with murder. How do you know about Horcruxes? Harry, I know lots of things. Harry stood, suddenly unable to sit still. I know that Voldemort created at least 6 of them. I know where some of them were hidden. And I know that I've already destroyed 4. Dumbledore went pale. 4, he repeated. You've destroyed 4 Horcruxes. Marvolo Gaunt's ring, Slytherin's locket, Ravenclaw's diadem, and Tom Riddle's diary. Harry ticked them off on his fingers. That leaves the cup, Hufflepuff's cup, hidden in Bellatrix Lestrange's vault at Gringotts, and the snake, which doesn't exist yet because Voldemort hasn't created it. And the 7th. Harry's hand went to his scar. We'll both know where the 7th is. The silence stretched between them, heavy and loaded. Dumbledore's face was a mask, but Harry could see the calculations happening behind his eyes. Reevaluating, reassessing, trying to fit this new information into his existing plans. You've been doing this alone, Dumbledore said finally. For years, without guidance, without support, without telling anyone the full truth. I had support, just not yours. But why? Genuine confusion entered Dumbledore's voice. Why keep this from me? We want the same thing. Voldemort's destruction. We could have worked together. Could we? Harry's voice hardened. You left me with the Dursleys for 4 years. You knew they hated magic. Knew they'd treat me as something less than human, and you left me there anyway. For the greater good. Dumbledore flinched. I'm not your weapon, Harry continued. I'm not your chosen one, your piece on the board, your sacrifice for the cause. I'm Harry Potter. I'm 10 years old, and I've done more to stop Voldemort in the last 5 years than the entire wizarding world has done in a decade. And I did it without you. Harry? I'm not finished. Harry stepped closer, and something in his bearing made Dumbledore lean back slightly. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to attend Hogwarts, because there's still work to be done there. But I'm not going to be your student, your project, your responsibility. I'm going to do what needs to be done, and you're going to stay out of my way. And if I don't, then I'll tell the world what I know. Harry's voice was ice. About the Horcruxes, about your plans, about every secret you've been keeping for the greater good. The Prophet would have a field day, wouldn't they? Dumbledore knew Dark Lord could return. Did nothing. Dumbledore's eyes had gone cold, not angry, calculating. The grandfatherly fuckhead was completely gone, replaced by something harder and more dangerous. You would make yourself a target, he said quietly, if Voldemort's followers learned you were destroying his anchors. They already know someone is doing it. Lucius Malfoy knows something was taken from his vault. It's only a matter of time before they figure out what. Harry smiled grimly. But that's my problem, not yours. Harry, please. And suddenly Dumbledore looked old. Tired, genuinely concerned. Whatever you think of me, whatever I've done wrong, and I have made mistakes, I freely admit that. I don't want to see you hurt. Let me help. Let me protect you. You want to protect me. Harry met his eyes. Then give me Sirius Black. Dumbledore blinked. Sirius Black. My godfather. Sitting in Azkaban for crimes he didn't commit, because no one bothered to give him a trial. Harry's voice was steady. Peter Pettigrew was the real traitor. He's still alive, hiding somewhere, probably in an animagus form. I want Sirius freed and cleared. I want him to have the life that was stolen from him. That's a substantial request. You're the chief warlock. You have the power to make it happen. Harry crossed his arms. Consider it a gesture of good faith. Prove to me that you're willing to do the right thing, even when it's inconvenient. Dumbledore was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded.
I'll see what I can do.
Don't see. Do. Harry turned toward the door. We're done here. He was halfway out when Dumbledore's voice stopped him. Harry, the piece of Voldemort's soul in your scar, have you considered what might be required to remove it? Harry paused. Looked back. I've thought about it. And I'll deal with it when the time comes. He met Dumbledore's eyes one last time. But that's my choice to make. Not yours. Never yours. He walked out of the office without looking back. The Hogwarts letter arrived 2 weeks later. Harry sat at the Tonks family breakfast table, turning the thick parchment envelope over in his hands. It felt strange. In his other life, this letter had been a ticket to freedom, a promise of escape from the Dursleys. Now it was something different. A tactical choice. A step in a longer plan. You don't have to go, you know, Tonks said. She was visiting for the weekend, taking a break from her aura training to see him off. You could study independently, take your OWLs and EWs when you're ready, skip the whole school thing entirely. I know. Harry broke the seal and pulled out the letter. But there are still things at Hogwarts I need to deal with. People I need to meet. And besides, he smiled slightly, I want to see the look on everyone's face when Harry Potter shows up and doesn't match any of their expectations. Chaos Gremlin. Tonks said fondly, that's what you are. I prefer strategic disruptor. Same thing. Harry read through the letter. The usual welcome, the list of required supplies, the platform instructions. Nothing had changed from his memories. September 1st, Platform 9. Be there by 11. Except everything had changed. He destroyed 4 Horcruxes. Dumbledore knew about his mission and was, if not an ally, at least neutralized. Sirius's case was being reopened, thanks to pressure from both Dumbledore and Amelia Bones. And in a few weeks, Harry would walk through the doors of Hogwarts as the most prepared first-year student in the school's history. What house do you think you'll be in? Tonks asked. Gryffindor, like your parents. Harry considered the question. In his other life, the Sorting Hat had wanted to put him in Slytherin. He'd argued his way into Gryffindor, convinced that Slytherin meant dark magic and evil intentions. But he wasn't the same person anymore. And Slytherin. Slytherin had resources, connections, access to people and places that Gryffindor never would. I'm not sure yet, he said. I suppose we'll find out. Tonks studied him for a moment. You're planning something.
Always.
Harry. Her voice was serious. Whatever you're doing at Hogwarts, whatever your next move is, be careful. Please. I've already lost too many people. I can't lose you too. Harry reached across the table and took her hand. You won't lose me. I promise. You can't promise that. I can. And I am. He squeezed her fingers. I've got too much to live for now. Family. Friends, a future worth fighting for. I'm not going to throw that away. Tonk's eyes glistened. Damn right you're not. They sat there for a moment, hands linked, the morning sunlight streaming through the windows. Then Harry pulled back and grinned. Now, are you going to help me shop for school supplies, or am I going to Diagon Alley alone? Like I'd missed that. Tonks stood, her hair shifting to a vibrant pink. Let's go traumatize some shopkeepers. September first arrived with uncommon sunshine and Harry Potter standing on platform 90, watching the scarlet steam engine gleam in the morning light. The Hogwarts Express. The start of a new chapter. Andromeda was there to see him off, along with Ted and Tonks. They'd said their goodbyes at home, but there was still a tightness in Andromeda's embrace when she hugged him one last time. Write to us, she said. Every week. More, if you can manage it. I will. And don't do anything too dangerous. Harry laughed. I'll try. He boarded the train and found an empty compartment, settling in by the window to watch the platform fade into the distance. The countryside rolled past, fields and forests and tiny villages, all the ordinary beauty of Britain sliding by like a dream. Somewhere out there, Voldemort's wraith was still lurking. Pettigrew was still hiding, the last Horcrux that Harry could reach, Hufflepuff's cup, was still waiting in Bellatrix's vault. But those were problems for another day. Today, Harry was 11 years old, going to Hogwarts, about to begin a new phase of his impossible mission. The compartment door slid open. Mind if I join you? A bushy-haired girl stood in the doorway, already wearing her school robes. Everywhere else is full. Harry's heart clenched. Hermione. Brilliant, loyal, impossible Hermione. The best friend he'd ever had. The person who'd kept him sane through 7 years of chaos. She didn't know him yet. Didn't know the adventures they'd shared, the battles they'd fought, the way she'd been there for him when no one else was. But she would. In time, she would. Sure? Harry said, and smiled. I'm Harry. Hermione's eyes went wide. Harry Potter, the Harry Potter. I've read all about you in, let me guess, modern magical history, the rise and fall of the dark arts, and great wizarding events of the 20th century. She stared at him. How did you know that? Lucky guess. Harry gestured to the seat across from him. Sit down. Tell me about yourself. And maybe, he grinned, maybe I'll tell you some things that aren't in those books. Hermione sat, her expression caught between suspicion and fascination. And as the train carried them north toward Hogwarts, toward the next phase of Harry's mission, toward a future that was already different from anything that had come before, Harry allowed himself to hope. 4 Horcruxes down, 2 to go. Allies gathering, enemies watching, and a war waiting somewhere over the horizon. But for now, in this moment, he was just a boy on a train making a friend. And that, Harry thought, was magic enough. Chapter 3. The Hogwarts question. The sorting hat dropped onto Harry's head, and the great hall disappeared. He'd forgotten how this felt, the strange intimacy of having another consciousness brush against his own, rifling through his thoughts like pages in a book. The hat's presence was ancient and patient, nothing like the violent intrusion of Voldemort's legilimency or the cold probe of Dumbledore's subtle examinations. Well, the hat murmured inside his skull. This is interesting. Very interesting indeed. Harry kept his mental shields carefully in place, not blocking the hat entirely. That would raise questions. But directing its attention away from certain memories. The future, the Horcruxes, the 17 years of experience that no 11-year-old should possess. You're hiding something. The hat observed. Something significant. I can feel the shape of it, even if I can't see the details. Everyone has secrets. True. But yours are rather larger than most. The hat paused, considering. I sorted you once before, didn't I? In another place, another time. You asked for Gryffindor then. Harry's heart stuttered. You remember that? I remember everything, Mr. Potter. Every student who has ever sat beneath me, every mind I have ever touched. Time is flexible from my perspective. I exist in all moments simultaneously, in a sense. The hat's voice took on an amused quality. You are not the first to carry memories of a different path, though you may be the most determined. Then you know what I'm trying to do. I know that you are trying to save lives, to prevent horrors, to make choices that were denied to you before. The hat's presence shifted, becoming more focused. The question is, where should I put you? You have courage in abundance. Godric would be proud to claim you. You have intelligence and a thirst for knowledge that Rowena would appreciate. Loyalty runs deep in your heart, enough to satisfy Helga, and ambition. The hat chuckled. Oh, the ambition, the cunning, the willingness to do whatever it takes. Salazar would recognize a kindred spirit. Put me in Slytherin. The hat's surprise was palpable. You requested Gryffindor before. Rather forcefully, as I recall. That was before. Harry let a sliver of his true thoughts show through. The calculations, the strategies, the cold-blooded planning that had kept him alive through impossible odds. I was wrong to reject Slytherin. I was wrong about a lot of things. And now I need to be where I can do the most good. Slytherin has resources I need, connections, access to people who might become enemies, or might become allies if I play this right. You want to change them. I want to give them a choice. Show them there's another way before the war comes and they're forced to pick sides. Harry's mental voice hardened. Too many people died because no one reached out to them soon enough. Because everyone assumed Slytherin meant Dark Wizard, meant Death Eater, meant enemy. I'm not making that mistake again. The hat was silent for a long moment. In the great hall, Harry could feel hundreds of eyes watching him, wondering why his sorting was taking so long. Very well, the hat said, finally. I see your reasoning, and I cannot fault it. Though I should warn you, the path you've chosen will not be easy. Slytherin House is not what it was in Salazar's day. Prejudice runs deep, and you will face opposition from within as well as without. I know. Then let it be.
S.I.
The last word echoed through the great hall. Silence. Complete, total, stunned silence. Harry removed the hat and set it on the stool. He could see the shock on every face. The Gryffindor table looking betrayed, the Ravenclaw table confused, the Hufflepuff table uncertain, and at the staff table, Dumbledore's expression had gone carefully blank, while Snape looked like he'd swallowed something extremely unpleasant. The Slytherin table started clapping, hesitantly at first, then with growing enthusiasm as students realized that the boy who lived, the symbol of the light, the child who had defeated the Dark Lord, was coming to sit among them. Harry walked toward his new house. The whispers started before he'd taken 3 steps. Harry Potter, a Slytherin. Must be a mistake, the hat's never wrong.
But he's the boy who lived.
Harry ignored them all. He found a seat at the end of the Slytherin table, away from the older students, and settled in to watch the rest of the sorting. Hermione went to Gryffindor as expected. So did Neville Longbottom, nervous, round, faced Neville, who had no idea he'd one day face down Voldemort himself. And then Malfoy. Draco! The pale blonde boy strutted to the stool with the confidence of someone who knew exactly where he belonged. The hat barely touched his head before shouting, "Slyion!" Draco made his way to the table, his smirk firmly in place, until he saw who was sitting at the end of the row. His face went through a fascinating series of expressions: confusion, then recognition, then something that looked almost like hope. He sat down across from Harry. "Potter," he said carefully, "I didn't expect to see you here. Life is full of surprises." Harry met his eyes. "Draco Malfoy, right? I've heard about your family." Draco's spine stiffened. "What have you heard?" "That your father is a powerful man with strong opinions. That your mother comes from the noble house of Black. That you've been raised to believe certain things about blood and magic and proper society. And—" Draco's voice had gone cold. "Is this where you tell me I'm wrong? That mudbloods are just as good as purebloods. That tradition doesn't matter. That. This is where I tell you that I don't care about blood." Harry's voice cut through Draco's rising hostility like a knife. "I care about competence, loyalty, whether someone can be trusted when things get hard. Everything else is window dressing." Draco stared at him. "You can't be serious. Try me." The sorting continued around them, but neither boy looked away. Something was happening between them. A negotiation, a sizing up, a moment that would define their relationship for years to come. "My father says you're dangerous," Draco said finally. "That you know things you shouldn't. That something happened at our manor last year. Something that's still being investigated." "Your father says a lot of things." Harry didn't flinch. "But here's what I know: the war isn't over. It's just waiting. And when it comes back, everyone's going to have to choose sides. I'd rather build alliances now than fight alone later." Alliances. Draco rolled the word around like he was tasting it. "You want to ally with me. I want to give you options. The same options no one gave you before." Draco's brow furrowed. "Before what?" Harry just smiled. The first week at Hogwarts was an exercise in reputation management. Harry Potter in Slytherin was the scandal of the century. Students from every house stopped to stare when he walked through the corridors. Professors called on him constantly, as if expecting him to suddenly reveal himself as a dark wizard in training. And the Daily Prophet ran 3 separate articles, speculating about what his sorting meant for the future of the wizarding world. Harry ignored all of it. He attended classes, took notes, demonstrated just enough competence to avoid suspicion without revealing the full extent of his abilities. In Transfiguration, he successfully changed his match into a needle on the 3rd try. Not the first, which would have been suspicious, but not the 10th either. In Charms, he mastered Wingardium Leviosa with appropriate effort. In Potions was complicated. Snape hated him. That much was immediately clear from the moment Harry walked into the dungeon classroom. The man's eyes had fixed on Harry with an intensity that bordered on obsession, seeing James Potter's face staring back at him, seeing every slight and humiliation of his teenage years. "Yes," Snape had said during that first lesson, his voice dripping with contempt. "Harry Potter, our new celebrity." In his other life, Harry would have bristled, would have responded with defiance, with anger, with the instinctive rejection of anyone who treated him unfairly. Now he just met Snape's eyes and waited. The silence stretched, Snape's lip curled. "Tell me, Potter, what would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood?" "The draught of living death, sir." "A powerful sleeping potion." Snape's eyes narrowed. "Where would you look if I told you to find me a bezoar?" "The stomach of a goat." "It's an antidote to most poisons." "And what is the difference between monkshood and wolfsbane?" "They're the same plant, sir, also called aconite." The class had gone completely silent. Every student was staring at Harry, even the Slytherins, who'd expected him to fail as spectacularly as any other first year. Snape's face was unreadable. It seems fame isn't everything. Perhaps you're not as hopeless as your father was. It wasn't praise. It wasn't even neutrality. But it was something. A grudging acknowledgement that Harry wasn't going to be the easy target Snape had expected. Harry let himself breathe. "I read ahead, sir. The textbook was quite informative." Snape stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned away. 5 points to Slytherin for adequate preparation. Now, pair up. We're brewing a simple cure for boils today, and I expect perfection. Harry partnered with Draco. The first month established patterns. Harry built relationships carefully, methodically. He helped struggling students with their homework. Not obviously, not in ways that drew attention, but consistently enough that people started to notice. He ate meals with different groups, sat in common rooms with people from multiple houses, refused to be confined by the boundaries everyone expected him to observe. "You're doing it again," Hermione said during one of their library sessions. She'd been wary of him at first. The girl who did everything right wasn't sure what to make of the boy who lived sorting into Slytherin. But Harry had won her over with genuine interest in her thoughts and a willingness to discuss magical theory at length. Doing what? Being nice to everyone. She frowned at her Transfiguration notes. The other Slytherins don't like it. The other Slytherins can adjust. But why? Why does it matter to you what people think? Harry considered how to answer. The truth was complicated. Too complicated for an 11-year-old who didn't know about time travel and soul fragments and the war that was coming. "Because alliances matter more than house loyalty," he said finally. "Because the people I'm building relationships with now might be the people who save my life later, or whose lives I need to save." Hermione's eyes went wide. "You sound like you're preparing for a war." "Maybe I am." She studied him with that intense, penetrating look she got when something didn't add up. "Harry."
What aren't you telling me?
"A lot of things." He met her gaze directly. "But not because I don't trust you. Because some knowledge is dangerous, and I'd rather keep you safe than drag you into my problems." "That's not your decision to make." "Maybe not. But it's the one I'm making anyway." Harry reached across the table and squeezed her hand briefly. "When the time is right, I'll tell you everything, I promise. Just trust me for now." Hermione was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. "I trust you. But I'm going to hold you to that promise. I'd expect nothing less." The confrontation with Quirrell came 3 weeks into the term. Harry had been waiting for it. He knew Voldemort was here, could feel the faint prickle in his scar whenever he passed the defense classroom, the echo of the soul fragment in his head responding to its master's presence. But he'd held back, watching, planning, waiting for the right moment to act. The right moment came on a Thursday night, when Harry slipped out of the Slytherin common room and made his way to the 3rd-floor corridor. Fluffy was there, as expected. The 3-headed dog snarled when Harry approached, but a quick hiss of Parseltongue calmed it enough for Harry to get close. "I need to speak to the parasite attached to Quirrell," Harry said quietly. "Tell him I know what he is. Tell him I want to negotiate." The dog's 6 eyes blinked in confusion. It wasn't used to being a messenger. Harry sighed, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a small harp. He'd borrowed it from the music room earlier that evening, charmed to play itself for exactly 30 minutes. The enchanted music filled the corridor. Fluffy's eyes drooped. Within moments, all 3 heads were snoring. Harry stepped over the sleeping dog and dropped through the trapdoor. The obstacles were exactly as he remembered. Devil's Snare flying keys, Giant chess set. Trolls unconscious, thankfully. Potions puzzle. Harry navigated them quickly, his adult mind making short work of challenges designed to test students. The final chamber was different. In his original timeline, the Mirror of Arised had been here, hiding the Philosopher's Stone. But Harry had arrived months earlier than before, and Dumbledore's protections were still incomplete. The chamber was empty except for, "I wondered when you would come." Quirrell stood in the center of the room, his turban unwound, the terrible face of Voldemort visible on the back of his skull. The Dark Lord's red eyes gleamed in the torchlight. "Harry Potter," Voldemort whispered. "The boy who lived." "How unexpected, Lord Voldemort." Harry kept his voice steady. "Or should I say, the fragment of Lord Voldemort currently possessing a mediocre defense professor." Quirrell's body went rigid. "You know what I am. I know a lot of things." Harry took a step closer. "I know you're looking for the Philosopher's Stone. I know Dumbledore moved it here to trap you. And I know that even if you get it, even if you create a new body, you're still going to lose." Bold words for a child. "I'm not a child." Harry let some of his shield slip. Let Voldemort feel the weight of experience behind his eyes. Not really. Not where it counts. Voldemort's eyes narrowed. Something flickered across his distorted features. Recognition, maybe. Or fear. "What are you?" "Someone who knows how this ends." Harry's voice was cold. "Your Horcruxes are being destroyed. One by one, piece by piece. The ring is gone. The locket is gone. The diadem is gone. The diary is gone. You've got 2 fragments left. The one in the cup and the one in me." The silence was absolute. "You're lying," Voldemort hissed. "You couldn't know about those. No one knows. I know everything." Harry took another step forward. "I know you were born Tom Marvolo Riddle. I know your mother was Merope Gaunt, and your father was a muggle who abandoned her. I know you killed your father and grandparents when you were 16, used their deaths to create your first Horcrux. I know you're terrified of death, so terrified that you ripped your soul apart rather than face it like everyone else." Quirrell's body was shaking now. Whether from Voldemort's rage or his host's fear, Harry couldn't tell. "How?" The word came out as a rasp.
How do you know these things?
"Because I've lived through this before." Harry met those red eyes directly. "In another timeline, another life, you came back. You built a new body, gathered your followers, started a war that killed hundreds. And at the end of it, I killed you. I watched you die, Tom. I watched your soul. What was left of it? Leave your body and go. Wherever souls go when they're that damaged. Impossible. You're one to talk about impossible." Harry's smile was sharp. "You've done things no wizard should be able to do. So have I. The difference is, I did mine to protect people. You did yours because you were scared." Voldemort's composure cracked. For just a moment, Harry saw real fear in those terrible eyes. The terror of a man who had built his entire existence on the assumption of his own immortality, confronted with evidence that it had all been for nothing. Then the fear transformed into rage. "Cam!" Voldemort screamed. Quirrell lunged. Harry had been expecting this. His wand was already moving, casting a shield charm that deflected Quirrell's first curse, followed by a stunner that caught the professor in the chest. But Voldemort wasn't finished. Dark magic poured from Quirrell's body, pure malevolence given form, reaching for Harry with tendrils of shadow that burned where they touched. Harry's scar exploded with pain. The fragment in his head was resonating with Voldemort's presence, trying to reconnect, trying to merge back into the whole. It took everything Harry had to maintain his occlumency shields, to keep his mind his own while his forehead felt like it was being split open.
You cannot win.
Voldemort's voice echoed from every direction.
I am immortal. I am beyond death.
You are nothing but a child. I'm the child who's already destroyed most of your soul. Harry pushed through the pain, raised his wand, and I'm going to finish the job. He didn't cast Fiendfire. His magical core wasn't strong enough, not yet, and attempting it would probably kill him. But there were other ways to hurt Voldemort. Harry pressed his hands against Quirrell's face. The reaction was immediate. Quirrell's skin blistered where Harry touched it, burning from the inside out. The man screamed, a high, terrible sound that had nothing to do with Voldemort, and tried to pull away. Your mother's protection, Harry said through gritted teeth. You figured it out, didn't you? The blood wards, the sacrifice, the love that saved me. It's still in me, Tom. It burns you every time you get close. Him, make me. The battle became one of endurance. Harry held on while Voldemort's darkness clawed at his mind, while Quirrell's flesh charred beneath his fingers, while his scar poured blood down his face. The pain was unimaginable, worse than anything he'd experienced in either of his lives. But Harry had learned something in his 17 years' pain was temporary. Defeat was not. He held on. Quirrell stopped screaming. His body went limp. And then something tore free, a dark shape barely visible, shrieking with impotent fury as it fled through the walls of the chamber. Voldemort's wraith, forced out of its host by pain and protection. Harry collapsed beside Quirrell's unconscious form. The professor was still breathing, barely. The burns on his face were severe, but not fatal. He'd live, assuming someone found him in time. Harry pulled himself to his feet. His hands were shaking. His scar was still bleeding. And somewhere in the castle, an alarm was probably going off. He needed to move. But first, Harry knelt beside Quirrell and checked the man's chest. The dark mark was there, faded but visible. A reminder of what Quirrell had chosen, what he'd allowed himself to become. You could have been better, Harry said quietly. You had talent, intelligence. You could have done something worthwhile with your life. Instead, you let him in, let him use you. Quirrell didn't respond, couldn't respond. Harry stood and walked out of the chamber. The aftermath was chaos. Harry made it back to the Slytherin common room before anyone realized he was gone. He cleaned the blood from his face, changed his robes, and was sitting by the fire reading a book when the commotion started. Did you hear? A seventh year burst through the entrance, eyes wild. Professor Quirrell collapsed in his quarters. They found him with burns all over his face. Dumbledore's investigating. Harry turned a page. How terrible. They're saying it might be dark magic. That someone attacked him. And Hogwarts.
Surely not.
Harry's voice was perfectly bland. I'm sure the headmaster will get to the bottom of it. The seventh year gave him a strange look, but didn't press further. Harry went back to his book. An hour later, a house elf appeared with a summons to the headmaster's office. Dumbledore was waiting behind his desk, looking older and more tired than Harry had ever seen him. Fawkes sat on his perch, trilling softly, a sound that might have been comfort or accusation. Sit down, Harry. Harry sat. Quirinus Quirrell is in the hospital wing, Dumbledore said. He has severe burns on his face and hands, consistent with exposure to powerful protective magic. He also has no memory of the past several months. No memory. The healers believe something was removed from him, something that had taken up residence in his mind. Dumbledore's eyes met Harry's. Something dark. Harry waited. The third-floor corridor has been breached. The obstacles protecting the... Dumbledore paused. Protecting certain valuable items were triggered, and a student with your magical signature was detected in areas that are strictly forbidden. I went for a walk. Couldn't sleep. A walk that took you through a trapdoor guarded by a Cerberus. I'm an adventurous walker. Dumbledore didn't smile. Harry, I need you to tell me what happened tonight. Why? So you can add it to your file on me. Harry's voice hardened. I know you're still watching me. Still having me followed. You don't trust me. And frankly, I don't trust you either. So why should I tell you anything? Because a professor was nearly killed. Because Voldemort's presence was detected in this castle. Because whatever happened in that chamber, you were clearly involved. Dumbledore leaned forward. I am not your enemy, Harry. I am trying to protect you. Protect me? Harry laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. You want to protect me? Then tell me about the Philosopher's Stone. Tell me why you brought an artifact that could give Voldemort a new body into a school full of children. Tell me what your actual plan was. Dumbledore was silent. You were using it as bait, Harry continued. You knew Voldemort would come for it. You wanted him to come so you could trap him here, where you could control the situation. And you didn't care that students might get caught in the crossfire. That's not. It's exactly what happened in the timeline I remember. Harry's voice was flat. Voldemort possessed Quirrell, infiltrated the school, tried to steal the stone. And when he failed, you sent me, a first-year student, to face him alone. Because you knew I had the protection to survive his touch. Because you were testing me. Seeing if I could be the weapon you needed. Dumbledore's face had gone pale. I know everything, Harry said. Every manipulation, every secret, every choice you made in the name of the greater good. I lived through the consequences of those choices. I watched people die because you kept information from them. I died myself, walking into the Forbidden Forest to let Voldemort kill me. Because you'd spent years preparing me for exactly that sacrifice. Harry, so don't talk to me about protection. Harry stood. Don't pretend you're on my side. You're on your side, the same way you've always been, and I'm done being your pawn. He turned toward the door. Wait. Harry stopped. You're right. Dumbledore's voice was barely audible, about all of it. The stone, the test, the plans I've made. You're right, and I. He took a shuddering breath. I don't know how to be anything else. I've spent so long fighting this war, preparing for Voldemort's return, that I've forgotten how to see people as anything other than pieces on a board. Harry didn't turn around. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Dumbledore continued. I don't deserve it, and I suspect you're not inclined to give it anyway. But I am asking for a chance, to do better, to be the ally you need rather than the manipulator you expect. Silence. Prove it, Harry said finally. How? Sirius Black. You said you'd work on getting him freed. Where does that stand? I've presented evidence to the Wizengamot. Amelia is pushing for a trial. But there's resistance. The Malfoys, the old families, anyone who benefited from his imprisonment. It could take months to overcome their opposition. Not good enough. Harry turned around. You want to prove yourself. Get it done. Use your influence, your reputation, your political capital. Call in favors, make threats, do whatever you have to do. Get Sirius a trial before Christmas. That's the price. Harry's eyes were hard. Show me that you can put someone else first. Show me that the greater good includes actually helping the people who've been hurt by your choices. Do that, and maybe, I'll consider trusting you. He walked out of the office before Dumbledore could respond. The days after the Quirrell incident were strange. The official story was that Professor Quirrell had suffered a magical accident while practicing advanced defense techniques. He was placed on indefinite medical leave, and a succession of substitutes took over his classes. Harry didn't hear from Dumbledore for 2 weeks. Then, on a Friday morning in early November, an owl arrived at breakfast with a thick envelope bearing the Wizengamot seal. Harry opened it. Offic Not IC. Serus Oram Bielk by order of the Wizengamot. A formal hearing has been scheduled to review the imprisonment of Sirius Orion Black, currently held in Azkaban prison. New evidence has come to light suggesting that Mr. Black may have been wrongfully convicted. All interested parties are invited to attend. Data November 30, 1991, time on Loket.io and Ministry of Magic. Courtroom 10. Harry read the notice 3 times, making sure he understood. Dumbledore had done it. He'd actually done it. Good news. Draco asked, watching Harry's expression. The best. Harry tucked the notice into his pocket. Excuse me. I need to write some letters. The hearing was everything Harry had hoped for, and everything he'd feared. Courtroom 10 was packed. Ministry officials, reporters, curious onlookers. Everyone wanted to see the famous Sirius Black, the man who'd supposedly betrayed the Potters, finally get his day in court. Harry sat in the front row with Andromeda, who had insisted on attending despite the risk to her reputation. "He's my cousin," she'd said when he tried to dissuade her. Family is family, whatever the rest of them think. Sirius was brought in by Dementors. Harry's first glimpse of his godfather made his heart clench. Sirius was gaunt, hollow-eyed, his once handsome face aged decades by 10 years in the worst prison on earth. His hands shook as the guards removed his chains. His eyes swept the courtroom with the wild desperation of an animal that had forgotten what freedom looked like. Then those eyes found Harry. Something flickered in Sirius's expression. Recognition, confusion, and then hope. The proceedings began. Dumbledore presented the case with methodical precision. He detailed the lack of a trial in 1981, the assumption of guilt without evidence, the eyewitness accounts that had been ignored. He produced records showing that Sirius had never been questioned under Veritaserum, had never been given the opportunity to defend himself. Then he called his star witness. The court summons Peter Pettigrew. Gasps filled the courtroom. Pettigrew was dead. Everyone knew that. Sirius had blown him up, left nothing but a finger and a crater in the street. Except, Amelia Bones stood and gestured to 2 Aurors flanking a small, shabby man with watery eyes and a nervous twitch. A man who was missing 1 finger on his right hand. Peter Pettigrew was discovered 3 weeks ago in his animagus form, a rat, living with a wizarding family in Devon. Amelia's voice was cold and precise. He has been interrogated under Veritaserum and has confessed to multiple crimes, including the betrayal of James and Lily Potter to Lord Voldemort. The courtroom erupted. Harry watched it all unfold. The chaos, the shouting, the moment when Sirius realized that his nightmare was finally ending. Tears streamed down his godfather's face as Pettigrew's confession was read aloud, as 10 years of lies unraveled in the space of an afternoon. The vote was unanimous. Sirius Black was declared innocent. Harry was on his feet before the gavel finished falling. He pushed through the crowd, past the reporters and officials, until he reached the man who should have raised him, Sirius. His godfather looked down at him with eyes that didn't quite believe what they were seeing. "Harry." The voice was rough, broken from Dessous. "Is that really? You look just like—" "I know. Like my dad." Harry felt tears threatening. "I've been working on getting you out. For years. I never stopped believing you were innocent." Sirius made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "How? You were just a baby when they took me. How could you?" "I remembered. It wasn't quite a lie. I remembered you. And I knew you'd never have betrayed them. Not ever." Sirius fell to his knees and pulled Harry into an embrace. It was desperate, trembling, the hug of a man who'd forgotten what human contact felt like. "I'm sorry," Sirius whispered. "I'm so sorry. I should have been there. Should have raised you. Should have. It's not your fault." Harry held on tight. "None of it was your fault. And now you're free. Now we can be a family." Around them, cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions. But Harry didn't care about any of it. Sirius was free, and for the first time since this whole impossible journey began, Harry felt like maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. The weeks after Sirius's release were a whirlwind. Harry returned to Hogwarts while Sirius began his recovery, first at St. Mungo's, then at a cottage in the countryside that Andromeda helped him find. The damage from Azkaban was severe. Sirius had nightmares every night, flinched at sudden movements, sometimes forgot where he was or what year it was. But slowly, gradually, he started to heal. Harry visited during Christmas break. The cottage was small and cozy, nothing like the grandeur of Grimmauld Place, and Sirius had already made it his own. Muggle band posters covered the walls. A motorcycle sat in the shed, waiting to be restored. And everywhere Harry looked, there were photographs, pictures of James and Lily, of the Marauders, of a time before everything went wrong. "I still can't believe it," Sirius said on Christmas Eve, staring into the fire with a butterbeer in his hand. 10 years. I spent 10 years in that place, and now I'm sitting here with you like nothing happened. A lot happened. Harry sat beside him. "But it's over now. Pettigrew's in Azkaban where he belongs. You're free, and we've got time to make up for." "Time?" Sirius laughed bitterly. "I don't know what to do with time, Harry. I don't know who I am anymore. Everything I was, Auror, Marauder, James's best friend. It's all gone. There's nothing left." "That's not true." Harry turned to face him. "You're still Sirius Black. You're still brave and loyal, and willing to die for the people you love. Prison didn't take that away. It couldn't." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I knew you before." The words slipped out before Harry could stop them. In dreams, I mean. I used to dream about you, about what my life would have been like if you'd raised me. And in those dreams, you were always the same. Always fighting, always protecting, always there when I needed you." Sirius's eyes glistened. "I failed you, Harry. I let myself get captured, let Pettigrew frame me, let you grow up alone."
You didn't fail me.
Harry's voice was fierce. "You were a victim. Same as me, same as my parents. The only one who failed was Pettigrew, and he's paying for it now." They sat in silence for a while, watching the fire crackle. "Tell me about your parents," Sirius said finally. "Not the official story, not the legend. Tell me about who they really were." Harry smiled. "I was hoping you'd tell me." So Sirius did. He talked for hours. About James's pranks and Lily's temper. About the war and the resistance, and the hope they'd all carried despite the darkness. He told stories Harry had never heard. Painted pictures of people Harry had never known. Gave him a gift more precious than any Christmas present could ever be. By the time the fire burned low, Harry felt like he understood his parents better than he ever had. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" "For surviving. For being here. For giving me something I've always wanted." Sirius reached out and ruffled his hair. A gesture so natural, so fatherly, that Harry's heart ached. "Merry Christmas, Harry. Merry Christmas, Sirius." The rest of the school year passed in a blur. Harry maintained his careful balance, building alliances, attending classes, continuing his research into the remaining Horcruxes. The cup in Bellatrix's vault remained his primary target, but Gringotts was a fortress unlike any other. He'd need time, resources, and a plan far more sophisticated than anything he'd attempted before. In the meantime, he focused on changing the trajectory of lives around him. Draco Malfoy was his main project. The boy had been raised on pure-blood supremacy and Death Eater ideology, but Harry could see the cracks in his armor. Draco wanted approval, wanted to be seen as important and special, wanted things his father's money couldn't buy. Harry gave him those things. He treated Draco as an equal, debated with him, challenged him, refused to be intimidated by his family name or his sneering posture. He introduced Draco to Hermione, not as a rival, but as someone worth knowing, and watched with satisfaction as the first tentative threads of understanding formed between them. "You're doing that thing again," Hermione said one evening in the library. "That thing where you manipulate people into being better versions of themselves. Is that what I'm doing? Don't play innocent with me." She set down her quill with unnecessary force. "I've watched you all year. You're turning Draco Malfoy into someone who actually thinks about other people. You've got half of Slytherin questioning the blood purity nonsense they grew up with. And you haven't even started on the Gryffindors yet. The Gryffindors don't need as much work. Everyone needs work." Hermione's eyes were sharp. "What are you planning, Harry? What's the endgame?" Harry was quiet for a moment. Then he reached across the table and took her hand. "I'm trying to prevent a war," he said. "Not the war that's coming, that's probably inevitable, but the war after that, the generational conflict, the hatred passed down from parents to children, the cycle that keeps repeating no matter how many Dark Lords we defeat. By changing individuals, by changing how individuals think about each other. If I can get Draco Malfoy to see Muggle-borns as people instead of threats, if I can get Hermione Granger to understand why purebloods cling to tradition so desperately, if I can build bridges instead of walls." Harry shrugged. "Maybe the next generation won't have to fight the same battles we did." Hermione stared at him for a long moment. "You talk like someone much older than 11. I've been through a lot." "That's not an answer." "I know." Harry squeezed her hand. "But it's all I can give you right now. Just trust me, Hermione. Please. I'm doing this for the right reasons." She searched his face, looking for deception or hidden agendas. Harry let her look. He had nothing to hide from her, not really. Just knowledge she wasn't ready to receive. Finally, she nodded. "I trust you. But I'm going to want that full explanation eventually. You'll get it, I promise." The end of year brought exams, then farewells, then the train ride back to London. Harry sat in a compartment with Draco, Hermione, and Neville, an unlikely group that had formed over months of careful engineering. They talked about summer plans, about next year's classes, about all the normal things that students talked about when they weren't secretly fighting a shadow war against immortal Dark Lords. Watching them interact, Draco making sarcastic comments that were almost friendly now, Hermione correcting everyone's pronunciation with only mild superiority, Neville gaining confidence by the day. Harry felt something like hope. "You know," Draco said as the train approached King's Cross, "this year wasn't what I expected. No, I thought I'd spend it learning dark arts and making connections with the right sort of people." Draco glanced at Hermione, then quickly away. "Instead, I spent it arguing about homework with a Muggle, born and learning that maybe some of what my father taught me wasn't entirely accurate." "That's growth," Hermione said. "I'm proud of you." Draco flushed. "Don't get sentimental, Granger. I'm still a Malfoy. Being a Malfoy doesn't mean you can't change." Harry caught his eye. "It just means you've got more to unlearn than most people." The train slowed. Platform 9Z appeared outside the windows, crowded with families waiting to collect their children. Harry spotted Andromeda first, then Ted, then Sirius. His godfather was standing at the edge of the platform, looking healthier than Harry had seen him since his release. He'd put on weight, cut his hair, traded his prison rags for respectable robes. And when he saw Harry through the window, his face broke into a grin that made him look almost young again. Harry was off the train before it fully stopped.
Sirius!
They collided in the middle of the platform, hugging fiercely while other families streamed around them. Harry breathed in the scent of his godfather, leather and motor oil and something uniquely serious, and felt tears prick at his eyes. "I missed you," Sirius murmured against his hair. "Every day, every single day. I missed you too." They pulled apart. Sirius looked him over with a critical eye. "You've grown. What are they feeding you at that school?" "Food, mostly." Harry grinned. "But I might have added some supplementary training." "Training?" Sirius's eyebrows rose. "What kind of training?" "The kind that keeps people alive." Harry's grin faded into something more serious. "We need to talk." "Sirius, about the future?" "About what's coming. What's coming?" Harry looked around the crowded platform. This wasn't the place for secrets. "Let's go home," he said. "I'll explain everything." That night, in the cottage's small living room, Harry told Sirius the truth. Not all of it. He couldn't bring himself to explain the time travel, the memories of a life that hadn't happened yet. But enough. The Horcruxes, the prophecy, the war that was coming. Sirius listened in silence, his face cycling through shock horror, determination, and finally a kind of grim acceptance. "You've destroyed 4 of them," he said when Harry finished. 4 pieces of his soul.
Yes.
"And there are 2 left. The cup in Bellatrix's vault and the piece in me." Harry touched his scar. "I'm not sure how to deal with either of them yet. But I'm working on it." Bellatrix. Sirius spat the name. Of course she'd be involved. She was always his most devoted follower. "Did you know her? Before?" "She's my cousin. Same as Andromeda, same as Narcissa." Sirius's jaw tightened. "We grew up together, though she was older. Even then, she was wrong. Something broken inside her that nothing could fix. She killed people I loved. In the future that I remember." Harry's voice was quiet. "She killed you, Sirius. Hit you with a curse during a battle at the Ministry, and you fell through the veil." Sirius went very still. "In that future." Harry continued, "I spent 2 years blaming myself, thinking that if I'd been faster, smarter, better, I could have saved you. I swore that if I ever got a second chance, I'd do things differently. And now you have that chance. Now I have that chance." Harry met his godfather's eyes. "I won't let her hurt you again, Sirius. I won't let any of them hurt the people I love, whatever it takes." Sirius was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled Harry into a hug. "You're not supposed to carry this alone," he said. "You're 11 years old, Harry. Even with whatever knowledge you've got, whatever abilities you've developed, you're still just a kid. Let me help. Let all of us help."
I'm trying. Harry's voice cracked.
"But it's hard. I've been doing this alone for so long." "Not anymore." Sirius held him tighter. "You've got me now. You've got Andromeda and Ted and Tonks. You've got friends at Hogwarts, allies in the Ministry. You're not alone, Harry. You never have to be alone again." Harry let himself be held. Let himself, for just a moment, be a child in his godfather's arms instead of a soldier fighting an impossible war. "Thank you," he whispered. "Always," Sirius said. "That's what family is for." The summer passed quickly. Harry divided his time between the cottage and the Tonks household, training with Sirius and researching with Andromeda and sparring with Tonks when she visited from Auror headquarters. His skills grew sharper, his knowledge deeper, his plans more refined. The cup remained a problem. Gringotts' security was legendary, and the Lestrange vault was one of the most heavily protected in the bank. Any attempt to break in would trigger alarms, summon guards, probably get him killed. He needed another approach. What about the goblins themselves? Tonks suggested one evening. Maybe you could negotiate with them. Goblins don't negotiate. Not about vault security. Harry shook his head. Their entire business model depends on being absolutely trustworthy. If word got out that they'd helped someone break into a client's vault, even a Death Eater's vault, no one would ever trust them again. Then we need someone with authorized access. Andromeda said thoughtfully. Someone who has legitimate reason to enter the Lestrange vault. Like who? Bellatrix is in Azkaban and her husband's dead. But her sister isn't. Harry froze. Narcissa? She's the closest living relative. In the event of Bellatrix's unavailability, Narcissa would have emergency access to family vaults. It's standard pure-blood practice. Narcissa Malfoy would never help us. She's married to a Death Eater. She's married to a coward. Andromeda's voice was cold. Lucius Malfoy was never a true believer. He just liked power, and was willing to do whatever it took to keep it. When Voldemort fell, he claimed Imperius faster than you can say a blood traitor. So Narcissa isn't stupid. She knows what's coming. She knows that if Voldemort returns, her family will be dragged back into the war, whether they want to or not. And she knows what happened to families that got too close to the Dark Lord. Andromeda's eyes met Harry's. She loves her son more than anything. If you offered her a way to protect Draco, really protect him, she might be willing to make a deal. Harry considered this. It was risky. Narcissa was a black, which meant she was cunning and dangerous. But she was also a mother, and Harry had seen what mothers were willing to do for their children. His own mother had died for him, had given her life without hesitation. Maybe Narcissa could be convinced to live for her son instead. I need to think about this, Harry said, but it might work. It just might work. The opportunity came at the end of August. Harry received an invitation to Malfoy Manor, a formal request from Lucius Malfoy to discuss his son's academic progress before the start of second year. The timing was suspicious, but Harry had learned to take advantages where he found them. This is a trap, Sirius said flatly when Harry showed him the letter. Probably. Then why are you considering it? Because Narcissa will be there. Harry folded the letter carefully. And because I need to have a conversation with her that can't happen anywhere else. Harry, I'll be careful. Harry met his godfather's eyes. Trust me, Sirius. I've walked into more dangerous situations than this and survived. That doesn't make me feel better. I know, but I need to do this. Harry put a hand on Sirius's arm. I'll have my emergency portkey. If anything goes wrong, I'll be out of there in seconds. Sirius didn't look happy, but he nodded. Just come back safe. That's all I ask. I will. Malfoy Manor hadn't changed since Harry's midnight break 2 years ago. The white peacocks still strutted across the lawns. The Gothic spires still reached toward the sky, and the wards still pressed against Harry's magical senses, testing him, evaluating him. But this time, he walked through the front door. Lucius was waiting in the entrance hall, his silver cane gleaming, his expression a perfect mask of aristocratic courtesy. Draco stood behind him, looking distinctly uncomfortable. Mr. Potter. Welcome to our home. Or Mr. Malfoy. Harry inclined his head slightly. Thank you for the invitation. Draco has spoken highly of your influence at Hogwarts. Lucius's tone suggested this was not entirely a compliment. I thought it prudent to meet you myself. Of course. Harry's face was equally blank. I imagine you had questions. Indeed I do. They adjourned to the drawing room, the same room where Hermione had been tortured in Harry's memories of another timeline. He pushed the thought aside and focused on the present. Tea was served. Pleasantries were exchanged. Lucius probed, Harry deflected. And the whole time Harry was watching for his opportunity. It came when Lucius excused himself to take a flu call. "Draco," Harry said casually, "would you mind showing me the gardens? I've heard they're quite impressive." Draco looked uncertain. "I suppose. I'll accompany you." Narcissa's voice was cool and controlled, but Harry caught something beneath it. Interest, maybe, or suspicion, perfect. The gardens were as impressive as advertised, acres of manicured hedges, exotic magical plants, fountains that played with enchanted water. Draco rattled off information about various features, oblivious to the tension between Harry and his mother. Harry waited until they were far from the house, before making his move. "Draco, could you check on something for me? I thought I saw a jobberknoll near that hedge. They're quite rare, and I'd love to see one up close." Draco frowned. "You want me to chase birds? I want you to give your mother and me 5 minutes alone." Harry's voice was suddenly serious. "Please?" Draco looked between Harry and Narcissa, confusion evident on his face. But something in Harry's expression must have convinced him, because he nodded and walked toward the distant hedge. Narcissa's wand was in her hand before Draco was 10 feet away. "What do you want?" "Potter, to offer you something." Harry didn't reach for his own wand. "Something that could save your son's life." Narcissa's eyes narrowed. "Is that a threat?" "It's a warning." Harry kept his voice low and urgent. "Voldemort is going to return. Maybe not this year. Maybe not next year, but soon. And when he does, he's going to expect Lucius to serve him. He's going to expect Draco to take the mark. And if your family refuses, you know nothing about the Dark Lord. I know more than you could possibly imagine." Harry held her gaze. "I know he created objects to anchor his soul, Horcruxes. I know one of them is in Bellatrix's vault at Gringotts. And I know that destroying it is the only way to make sure he stays dead when he finally falls." Narcissa had gone very pale. "You want me to betray my sister. I want you to protect your son." Harry stepped closer. "Think about what happens if Voldemort returns and Draco becomes a Death Eater. Think about the things he'll be asked to do. The murders, the torture, the degradation of everything that makes him human. Is that what you want for him?" "I want him safe. He won't be safe with Voldemort alive. None of us will." Harry's voice softened. "I'm not asking you to fight. I'm not asking you to switch sides. I'm just asking you to help me get into that vault. One visit, one object, and you'll never hear from me about this again. And if I refuse, then Voldemort returns, and Draco becomes a pawn in a war he didn't choose." Harry shook his head. "I don't want that." "You don't want that? Help me prevent it." Narcissa was silent for a long moment. Her wand hand trembled slightly. Fear or anger, Harry couldn't tell. "How do I know you're telling the truth?" she asked finally. "About the Horcruxes." "Because I've already destroyed 4 of them." Harry pulled a small object from his pocket. The cracked resurrection stone, salvaged from the ruins of the Gaunt Ring. This was part of one. The magic that bound it is gone now, but you can feel the residue if you try. Narcissa took the stone with hesitant fingers. Her eyes widened as she felt the dark magic still clinging to its surface. Slytherin's locket, the Gaunt Ring, Ravenclaw's diadem, Tom Riddle's diary. Harry recited them like a litany. "The cup is the last one I can reach, the last piece that stands between your son and safety." Narcissa looked at the stone for a long time. Then she looked at Harry. "You're not really 11 years old, are you?" Does it matter? I suppose not. She took a deep breath. I'll help you. On one condition. Name it. When the time comes, when Voldemort returns and demands Draco's service, you protect him. You find a way to keep him out of the war, whatever it takes. Harry thought of Draco in his memories, the frightened boy on the astronomy tower, unable to kill Dumbledore, the young man who'd refused to identify Harry at Malfoy Manor, the survivor who'd lost everything and still managed to build a new life after the war. I'll protect him, Harry said. I promise. Narcissa nodded. Then we have a deal, Mr. Potter. She handed back the resurrection stone. I'll arrange a visit to my sister's vault next week. Be ready. The Gringotts' heist went smoother than Harry had any right to expect. Narcissa's authorization got them past the front desk. A carefully worded request. Bellatrix had asked her to retrieve family documents before her trial, satisfied the goblin in charge of the Lestrange accounts. And before Harry quite believed it, he was standing in the deepest vault of Wizarding Britain's most secure bank. The cup was there, gleaming among piles of cursed gold. Harry reached for it with dragonhide gloves, felt the Horcrux's malevolence wash over him, and tucked it into his bag before any of the vault's defenses could trigger. Is that it? Narcissa asked, her voice tight with tension. That's it. They left the vault, returned to the surface, walked calmly out of Gringotts, like nothing unusual had happened. It wasn't until they were safely back at the manor, Draco dismissed to his room, that Narcissa finally allowed herself to breathe. I can't believe that worked. Neither can I. Honestly. Harry pulled the cup from his bag. But now comes the hard part. He drew the basilisk fang he'd kept since the chamber. You may want to stand back. The cup screamed when he stabbed it. The same terrible, psychic shriek that had accompanied every Horcrux destruction. Amplified, this time, by the power of the container. Hufflepuff's cup had been crafted by a founder, imbued with centuries of magical significance. The soul fragment fought harder, clawing at Harry's mind with desperate fury. Harry held on. The cup cracked. Black smoke poured from the wound, and then silence. 5 down. 1 to go. Harry slumped against the wall, exhausted but triumphant. Narcissa stared at the destroyed cup with something like awe. It's really over, she whispered. That piece of him is gone. That piece. Harry touched his scar. There's still one more. The one in you. Yes. Narcissa was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and touched his shoulder. A gesture so unexpected that Harry nearly flinched. Find a way to survive it, she said. Whatever you have to do, find a way. I'm working on it. Work faster. Her voice was fierce. You made me a promise about my son. I expect you to keep it. Harry smiled tiredly. I will. I always keep my promises. Second year at Hogwarts began without incident. Harry returned to his careful work of building alliances and changing minds. Draco was warmer now, though he tried to hide it. Hermione had abandoned her suspicion in favor of genuine friendship. Neville was growing into someone confident and capable. And across the castle, students were starting to question assumptions they'd always taken for granted. The diary's absence had altered history in ways Harry couldn't entirely predict. Without the Chamber of Secrets opening, without the terror and petrification that had marked his original second year, the school was calmer, more normal. Harry almost didn't know what to do with normal. He spent his free time researching the final Horcrux, the piece of Voldemort's soul lodged in his own head. The options weren't good. In his original timeline, he'd died to destroy it, had let Voldemort kill him in the Forbidden Forest, and somehow survived through a combination of Hallows magic and the blood protection flowing through Voldemort's new body. He didn't want to die again. Once had been quite enough. But the alternatives were scarce. Basilisk venom would kill him along with the Horcrux. Fiendfire would burn him alive. Dementors might be able to suck the fragment out, but they'd take his soul with it. There had to be another way. There had to be. The answer came from an unexpected source. "You're looking for soul magic," Luna Lovegood said dreamily. Harry blinked. The first, Year Ravenclaw, had appeared beside him in the library without any warning, her protuberant eyes fixed on something just over his left shoulder. "I'm sorry? Soul magic. That's what you're researching." Luna tilted her head. "The rackspurts are very thick around your scar. I don't think they're rackspurts at all, actually. I think they're something else." Harry went very still. "Luna, what do you see around my scar?" "Darkness. Old darkness, hungry and scared." She smiled serenely. "But it's not supposed to be there. It's like a splinter in your soul. It needs to be pulled out." "I know it needs to be pulled out. The question is how. Have you tried asking it to leave?" Harry stared at her. "Asking it. Souls are complicated things. They have wishes and fears, just like people. Maybe if you asked very nicely, it would choose to go somewhere else." It was the most absurd suggestion Harry had ever heard. Asking a Horcrux to politely vacate his skull. Ridiculous. And yet, Voldemort's Horcruxes were made through murder. Through violation and destruction, and the forcible tearing of a soul. The fragment in Harry's head hadn't been created intentionally. It was an accident, a splinter broken off by the rebound of the killing curse. It had never chosen to be there. What if it wanted to leave? "Luna," Harry said slowly, "you might be a genius." "Oh, I know," she smiled. "The Nargles told me so." The ritual took 3 months to prepare. Harry researched soul magic from every angle, consulted with Dumbledore reluctantly, corresponded with Curse, Breakers and Unspeakables, and anyone else who might have relevant knowledge. He pieced together a theory, tested it against everything he knew about Horcruxes, and finally developed a plan. The soul fragment in his scar wasn't anchored the way the others had been. It hadn't been placed there deliberately, hadn't been bound with protective enchantments, hadn't been given a purpose beyond mere existence. It was lost, confused, terrified, a piece of Tom Riddle that had never wanted to be separated from the whole. Harry was going to give it a choice. The ritual chamber was set up in the Room of Requirement, the only place in Hogwarts where Harry could guarantee privacy and magical flexibility. Dumbledore stood at one corner, Sirius at another, Andromeda at a third. Tonks had insisted on being there despite not being officially involved, and she occupied the fourth corner with her aura wand drawn. Harry sat in the center, surrounded by runes he'd carved with his own blood. "Are you sure about this?" Sirius asked for the 100th time. "There's no shame in waiting, finding another way." "There is no other way. Not one that doesn't involve dying." Harry met his godfather's eyes. "I trust this. I trust the magic. And I trust myself. Then let's begin." Dumbledore started the incantation. Ancient words in a language that predated Latin. Words that called to the soul and offered it passage. Harry closed his eyes and turned his attention inward. The fragment was there, as it always was. He could feel it now that he knew what to look for. A cold knot of wrongness nestled against his consciousness, feeding on his emotions, watching through his eyes. Harry reached for it. The fragment recoiled. Fear radiated from it in waves. Terror of the unknown, of dissolution, of the death it had been created to escape. "I'm not going to hurt you," Harry said. Not out loud, but in the space between their minds. "I'm offering you a choice." The voice was Tom Riddle's, but younger, more human. The fragment was from 1981, before the final descent into monstrousness, before the soul had been torn so many times that nothing recognizable remained. You can stay here, trapped in my head forever. Or you can leave. Pass on. Go wherever souls go when they're done with living. Y-O-1-T-M-O-D-I-E. I want you to be free. Harry let his sincerity flow through the connection. You're not Voldemort. You're just a piece of him. Broken off and lost. You don't have to share his fate. Tras no o tr fati bui onen. Warachisi dice idie. Not necessarily. Harry reached deeper into the connection. I'm offering you something he never could. Peace. Rest. An end to the fear. The fragment was silent for a long moment. Harry could feel it considering, weighing options, grappling with concepts it had never been designed to understand. Yo-yu well-yelled lighty mi-gyo, evnaftr evrytu. I've learned to separate people from the pieces of themselves. Harry thought of Draco, of Narcissa, of all the people he'd given second chances. You're not responsible for his crimes. You're just Kalatare dame why. Yes, the voice was wistful now.
I should I am. Will you go?
Another long silence.
We yes.
I wailed G.O. The pain was instantaneous and overwhelming. Harry felt the fragment tear itself free from his scar, felt 17 years of connection sever in a single agonizing moment. His scar burned like it was being carved fresh, blood pouring down his face, his screams echoing off the chamber walls. And then peace. The fragment was gone. The cold knot that had been part of Harry since infancy had simply departed. In its place was emptiness, a void that was also freedom, a lightness Harry had never known he was missing. He opened his eyes. Sirius was kneeling beside him, face white with terror. "Harry, are you?" "I'm okay." Harry's voice came out as a croak. "I'm better than okay. It's gone." "Sirius." "It's actually gone. The Horcrux. It chose to leave." Harry laughed, and there were tears streaming down his face, mixing with the blood from his scar. Luna was right. I just had to ask nicely. Sirius pulled him into a fierce embrace. Around them, the others were celebrating. Tonks whooping with joy, Andromeda weeping with relief, even Dumbledore smiling through his beard. But Harry barely noticed any of it. For the first time in either of his lives, his scar was just a scar. The last Horcrux was gone. Voldemort could die. The end of second year came with a different kind of celebration. Harry's exam results were excellent. Not perfect, because he'd learned to hold back, but good enough to satisfy everyone who was watching. His friendships were solid. His alliances were strong. And the weight he'd been carrying for so long, the knowledge of soul fragments and immortality anchors, had finally lifted. On the train home, surrounded by friends, Harry allowed himself to think about the future. Voldemort was still out there, still plotting, still scheming, still searching for a way to return to power. But now, when he finally succeeded, and Harry had no illusions that he could prevent it forever, the Dark Lord would be mortal. No Horcruxes, no safety nets, no second chances. When Voldemort fell, he would stay fallen. "You look different," Hermione said, watching him with those sharp eyes. "Lighter, somehow." "I feel lighter," Harry smiled. "Like I've finally put down something I've been carrying for a very long time." "Does this mean you'll finally tell me what you've been hiding?" Harry considered the question. He'd promised her answers, and Hermione never forgot a promise. "Soon," he said. "Not today, but soon. I need to figure out how to explain it in a way that makes sense. I can help with that. I'm very good at making sense of things." "I know you are." Harry reached out and took her hand. "That's why I'm going to need you, Hermione, when the time comes. When everything I've been preparing for finally happens." "The war." "The war?" Harry squeezed her fingers. "It's coming. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but soon. And when it does, I want you by my side. You and Draco and Neville and everyone else I've been gathering." Hermione's expression was serious. "You've been building an army. I've been building a family." Harry smiled. "That's what wins wars in the end, not power or strategy or even luck. Just people who care about each other enough to keep fighting." The train pulled into King's Cross. Harry could see Sirius waiting on the platform, Andromeda and Ted beside him, Tonks with her pink hair visible even from a distance. His family, his real family, chosen and forged through years of work and trust and hope. "Come on," Harry said, standing. "Let's go home." He stepped off the train into a world that was fundamentally different from the one he'd left behind in another life. Voldemort's soul was shattered. His godfather was free. His scar was finally silent. And somewhere on the horizon, a storm was gathering. Harry Potter smiled into the summer sun and walked toward his family. Whatever came next, he was ready. Chapter 40, First Year, New Rules Timeline 1991-1992's Age 11 Hogwarts unfolds differently. Harry sorts into Slytherin his choice, not the hats, to position himself near the diary's eventual target demographic. He befriends a confused Draco Malfoy while maintaining genuine connections with Hermione and Neville. The Quirrell situation accelerates when Harry confronts the possessed professor directly. Not at the end of the year, but within the first month. He doesn't wait for the mystery to unfold. He doesn't play games. He burns the wraith out of Quirrell and watches the man survive, freed from possession. But this creates a problem. Voldemort's spirit escapes, and now he knows someone is actively hunting him. The chapter culminates in Harry breaking into the Room of Requirement, destroying the diadem, and realizing he has only 2 Horcruxes left. Nagini not yet created, and the diary currently in Malfoy hands. Ends with Lucius Malfoy visiting Hogwarts, and Harry catching his eye across the Great Hall. Both of them know a war just started.